Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Click R3 number 16. It's good. It's gonna be a good podcast, I think. I've been looking around at all the stuff happening. It seems like a lot's going on. A lot of exciting stuff coming up too, I feel like. So of course, had to have in the usual here, the host, Mystic Ryan. How we doing, Ryan?
The co-host. I'm doing well, John. Joe, how are you doing?
Host, co-host. It's all the same. They're two hosts. So I guess that's co-host.
This is true.
Well, it's like co-CEO, but there's only one CEO.
I was just gonna say no. There's still technically two. Everybody's getting this wrong. We will get into that. That's where my mind. That's where my mind was going. I was like, oh, the co-host, co-CEO. No, actually, we're both the hosts. That's our rule. We're both hosts, which means somebody can take a sick day. Then the other guy's got to do the whole goddamn shebang by himself.
They got the title. You have to. Okay. Good stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of random, like it seems like a lot of random stuff for Sony, but then also it feels like we're talking about a lot of Microsoft too, just because they want to get involved. They're here. We're gonna make this like the click R3 press right trigger
press B, press
podcast.
A.
Yeah. Telling you. It's gonna be like we're gonna be a lot of Microsoft integrating into this podcast, so it's interesting times. A lot of commentary that has people scratching their head on where the industry is heading as well. So I think there's a lot of good discussion topics for the podcast tonight.
I would agree, John. It's times are a changing. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess some people aren't feeling it like that, but it's a very mysterious time in the industry. No one really knows what's going to happen.
Now you will be pleased to know, last night I wrapped up my final trophy on the Intermission DLC for 7 Remake. So I'm at a full
Platinum Remake completely?
Full 100% Intermission DLC. Last trophy I cleaned up was that Weiss boss fight. So it's full 100. Okay. Full 100. We're done.
So you're all done with Remake now?
I will start Rebirth very soon.
What'd you think of Remake?
Well, I remember playing it in 2020. I just wanted to go and get the platinum done, but I had never done Intermission, so I didn't get to see the final scene for Intermission that adds like a good 2 or 3 minutes of like additional sort of juicy bits going into Rebirth. But yes. What's funny is that I remember covering Rebirth right up until it came out, and now it's even been long enough, and that was only like a year ago. But it's like I already forgot all the trailers and everything, so I'm gonna go into Rebirth very fresh. So I'm excited.
And you get to play it on a PS5 Pro.
Exactly. Hey, being patient pays off.
Apparently. Now I'm thinking about it now. It's not a game I really feel like going back and starting from scratch to play through again because it's such a long game. But it does make me wonder if, like, man, I wish I had kind of waited. Although I would have gotten spoiled all over the place, and that's a story I wanted to have like unfold in front of me without the internet doing its thing.
And that's why I want to start it like really soon. Like that's what motivated me. If I'm going to do this, I want to get 7 Remake fresh in my head, jump right into Rebirth. Oh, the Pro option just dropped. Like, it's a great time to play it. I am slightly dreading the game, though, just in the sense that I keep hearing how much there is to do. And I've already, gone over the estimated time for 7 Remake. Every guide was like, 60 hours for the base game. Well, sure as shit, I spent 75 on it. And then and then everything for Intermission said 15 hours. And sure as shit, I spent 20 hours on it. So in this one... When this one says 200 hours, I have to tack on 30% to that. So you're telling me I'm in store for 240 something hours? I don't know, John.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if I'm built different. Apparently it's really hard too. The hard playthrough is tough. So
the hard playthrough is, yes. Some of those bosses, they become pretty spongy, but then they just do stupid damage. So a lot of it falls down to you trying to just manage and keep everyone alive.
Yeah, well, that
goes on.
I feel like 7 Remake had a lot of that, but I'm bracing myself. I might start it tomorrow. We'll see.
Oh, okay. You have to let me know what you think of the card game that's in there too.
Well, it's funny because now that I just did Intermission, I played Fort Condor, and I loved how they did Fort Condor, which was cool because I didn't expect that to be an Intermission. So I must have completely missed that when that DLC came out.
Yeah, it's Queen's Blood. Yeah, it's the card game is yeah. I liked it. A lot of people I talked to did not like playing. I enjoyed it. It was fun. So I got to kick it up. It has a whole storyline on its own too, connected to it. So
all right, yeah, cool. Excellent stuff. What have you been playing, John?
Oh gosh, I played all kinds of randomness. I was working away at Kingdom Come Deliverance 2.
Ah, yeah, good reviews, good reviews.
Yeah, I was playing it for the past like 2 weeks on and off, and it just unfortunately, so I like the world. I'm interested in all the stuff they're trying to do with they have all kinds of interweaving storylines, and that's cool. The combat just has not clicked with me, and unfortunately that's a hefty part of the game. So it's just it feels very floaty. I haven't I'm a huge fan of the riposte. They have like a counter parry system kind of. It's just it feels kind of clunky to me.
Mm.
But if I mean, honestly, I know some people like it. If you get past that, or you just enjoy the combat, the game itself is pretty impressive. It's kind of like another Skyrim kind of moment for people who are fans of like the medieval style games that are very realistic.
All right.
That so for that I mean, in that case, it's pretty good. You know, I actually started up again, and I played it on the PS2, and then I played it again on the PS3, and I got it back in the day on the PS4, but I had just played through it on the PS3, so I kind of shelved it a bit, and now I'm going back to it fully, go all the way back through it. Shadow of the Colossus.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so I was going back through it here. So I've been doing this thing now where I have like these classic titles in mind that I'm showing the kids as they get just old enough to understand it. So
Mhm.
they don't start off with the Fortnites and the other things first. So I'm like, I got to show them the classics, but it can't be like too classic because then they just get bored and they don't want to play it. So I'm like, okay, that somewhere in that PS2, Xbox, GameCube era, there should be a nice handful of games I can show them that are like it's like that kind of game. So Shadow of the Colossus was one of them. I had it right here. I was like, let me pop this in, and I start playing it. And I immediately go through the first like 11 Colossus in like one sitting, just playing it. Like, man, this game really it is that game. It has like that aura to it. And man, the Blue Point one is just it's incredible.
Yeah. Oh, I think you are approaching it in the right manner, which is games that look competent and play competent. It's like anything under PS2. I feel like kids would just like not really get a. They
Yeah,
would it wouldn't agree with them.
they struggle with it. It is, and I get it because when you when you get out like a PS1 game or something, and it has like the wobbly graphics and it looks kind of like a wireframe, they just start going like, what is this? I don't get it. And as it's tough. If you get the 2D pixel art kind of games, that that pulls them in a bit
Sure.
more. But I kind of think if you get a nice PS2 level game, at least you can and it's good. Even a classic title, you can catch them. So I showed them that. I showed them like Okami, stuff from that generation, and it's working so far. It is.
It's
So
good.
I always have to tell them like, hey, this game's like 20 years old or something. Tell them, and they can't believe it. So Shadow of the Colossus, though, I mean, I'm playing it now. They're just kind of watching here and there. Man,
Mm.
it still holds up. It's
Yeah.
still really good.
Oh yeah, it does. It
Not a
absolutely
long
does.
game either. Like I beat the first 11 Colossus in like 3 hours or something, 3.5 hours. So
Yeah, I forget the game is like definitely on the short side, but like that and Eco are pretty short. That's why like the PS3 version had speedrun trophies on it. So you have to like beat
mhm.
it within a certain time in one sitting, generally.
This one has that for hard mode where you got to beat it in like 5 hours and 15 minutes or something on hard mode to get a trophy.
Yeah, okay. There, yep. Which is
So
not it's manageable. Very
yeah,
manageable.
I think so. Once you get you just got to learn each Colossus, you get, or at least remember them. In my case, each of their gimmicks to take them out. And then a lot of times, once you find their weak point, you figure it all out, and you have the controls down. You can take them out in like one shot, like
Hmm.
one attack, really. So, but that's been something I've been getting a kick out of right now is Shadow of the Colossus, going back and looking at a lot of these older games currently, and Ninja Gaiden Black 2, Ninja Gaiden 2 Black.
Yeah. Yeah, the remaster.
Man, it's good. It's very good. So
I'm
that's another one I
surprised.
recommend.
I'm surprised with how many people are like going back to that. I guess not. What is it like something where like nobody played it back then, or they just like don't I don't like
I don't know. I loved it on the 360 back in the day. People got annoyed with it because it was very difficult at some
yeah,
point.
it's a hard
And
game.
this one's like apparently more based on Sigma 2, where they try to fix some of that up a little bit, not make it as difficult. But I think maybe we're just also used to the Souls games now. Some of these action games from
Mm,
back then don't feel as difficult, but it's a different kind of game compared to the Souls games are like purposely difficult to make you like bash your head against the wall. They're not these action games. These action games are it has more reflex driven and stuff, but it doesn't feel like that kind of Souls-like experience. So I mean, it's good though. That visually speaking, it's great, super sharp looking, runs really, really well in terms of frame rate. I did order the physical copy on the PlayStation 5, so I'm waiting for that to come in. Otherwise, though, I've been playing it on Xbox Game Pass, so I figure I'll play through it there. Come in for the PS5, which I had to go play. Asia had
Yeah, they
like an
got
exclusive for that.
a multi-language version.
So I picked that one up. When it comes in, I'll probably just open it up, pop it in the PS5 Pro, and play it there too. So
Beautiful.
classic game, classic title.
I do remember
Absolutely
that.
recommend it.
Yeah, I remember that one with the PSN demo, which was like whooping everybody's ass.
Yeah, but I got a kick out of it on the Xbox 360 back in the day. Love that game. So fully recommend it. Fully recommend it.
Very good, very good. You want to move into some news stories, John?
Yes,
You have
sir.
a lot.
Yes, sir.
Do got a lot to go over. A lot happening in the PlayStation landscape. First things first, PS Plus Essential. That February lineup just went live. That's Payday 3, High on Life, and Pac-Man World Repack, which two of these are PS4 and 5 versions. One is PS5 only. That kind of segues into an announcement with that lineup, which was Sony making a formal announcement that they're going to be focusing on offering PS5 games with the monthly titles and game catalog starting January 2026. So they just like their language here was pretty specific, which was we may still provide titles that can be playable on both consoles after this date, but essentially they're just it's not going to be a key benefit, is what they're saying.
Yay. It took a while. We got there. We got here.
Yeah, but it's weird. I mean, it's like the language makes sense because like the game catalog is like hundreds of games. It's not like there's going to always be offering PS4 games on that. This to me reads as like we don't want to have to like make sure the monthly games are always cross-gen games. Like we want to get to a point where like the monthly titles, like it might be all three of them might be PS5 only games at that point. But like the game, like if you're extra or premium, surely there's still going to be like hundreds of PS4 games on there.
Right. Because I mean, so many are backwards compatible that they can just slot right in anyway. So
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think there might be, I'm thinking even in 2026, there'll probably be like 2 or 3 months where it's all PS5, but then the others, you'll see like a PS4 logo, at least in one of those boxes. So just slowly weaning people off of the PS4. We got to get away from that because the PS6 is coming. It's like, we can't have, how many logos can we fit in there?
Well, it's like the game catalog is just filled with like, at this point, subscription, right? Like stuff will rotate in and out. So like the Tales games are leaving soon. Like those will go back in. Those are all PS4 games. So it's honestly, I could see 27, 28, like even further than that, where we're still going to see PS4 stuff sort of rotate out. This to me reads as like PS5 stuff for the monthly games. Like if you remember with PS3 and Vita, when those were like legacy end years and they shut off the monthly games for those consoles, it's like that's when we were like basically full blown leaving those behind because so many studios were like they didn't want to ship games on them anymore. So I feel like
it's just easier though, right? The cross-gen thing. It's
like how could you not just by sheer proxy of how simple it was to make games on PS4 and PS5, like there's probably still going to be a lot, but it's a good like year notice. Moving on to a new firmware update, we have 25.01, 10.60. Only improved the system software performance and improved the messages and usability on some screens. However, kind of coincides with a formal announcement of the 30th anniversary themes, which are gone, John. They're gone. You can't have them anymore. But there's some good news. Due to positive reception, they're going to bring them back in the months ahead after they do something behind the scenes to get that sorted. I feel like I don't know, maybe like when they come back, they'll just like turn off like the boot up screen and like the shutdown sequence or something. And it's just only the themes, or maybe they'll like actually redo them. I would like them to redo them. So
they need to redo them.
I don't want that. Yeah. Like I get I appreciate it, but it's very much just a PNG on the top and bottom of the screen.
Yeah.
So like go back to the drawing board.
Like it's a fun temporary thing, and in their mind, they're probably like, yeah, this isn't our best work, but it's gonna be up for 2 months, whatever. And then the reception was really good online. People were so excited to pick between PS1, PS2, PS3. Okay, how many people do you know that were like, oh, the PS4 theme is here. Like, did anyone?
Wow, hold on. Why are we picking on PS4 all of a sudden?
I mean, it's just funny. It's like, look, guys, the PS4 theme. It's like, great.
Yeah,
Thanks.
the blue waves. Those are iconic.
I mean, I think a lot of people were more excited for like the PS2. I think PS2 is probably the one that most people were excited for from what I saw online. But like, it
I'd
was
say
cool with the
3.
PS3 and you think so? Really? We did the poll. It was
Yeah,
PS2.
was it really? Those black XMB waves, you can't beat it.
I know the PS3. I left mine on the PS3. I think that was great.
You got the XMB ketones, which is like I feel like that. Like when this comes back, they might not bring like I don't know. In my head, it seems like they're just going to bring back the imagery, but not necessarily everything else that came with it.
Maybe there's some stuff they have to account for that's like they know is coming up far into the future. Even look, this has to last basically forever on this dashboard. Let's touch up all the loose ends and just make sure it doesn't break something or look off when we do a new welcome tab or something weird, or let's just make sure.
That's exactly right. I was seeing a lot of people say like, why does it have to be months? Just like don't turn it off. But it's like, well, they clearly weren't planning on this being permanent. You would think this seems very simple on the surface, but like, God forbid there are so many little technical things that, if it wasn't meant to be there, they don't want to have to then leave it there and account for it with every system software update after this. Like these things almost always it's more difficult than it seems. So
yeah,
probably that
is.
Which they also went out of their way to say we're not doing additional themes. So
it's too late. They showed us it's possible. The genie's out of the bottle now. We know.
Possible, yes, but I hate being the guy that says this. I've been saying it for like 2-something years. This thing was designed to not have themes. Your games are your themes. Like, sure, they can override them. We all know they could do it. But like like they made it so that like, yeah, here's our excuse to never do them. Like, which mind you, if it was like if this were Switch, like Switch is just straight up, you get a horizontal row of icons and you get gray or white.
Yeah, there's video of I think there was a video of me when I first got it. I was like, they'll add more themes in the future.
They never did.
Like, it's still dark theme and light theme basically.
And they never did. Here's
funny.
The thing. I get mad when I install a PS5 game and it doesn't like at the very minimum play music because it can only do a background image and then music. Mm-hmm. And this this is why I like the PS5 UI because it reminds me of PS3s where games when you sat on their icon it would show a background image. It would play it. Sometimes it would play a video. Sometimes
icon, yeah.
But like at the very least, I want the background image. I want music. I would be so bummed when a studio just like phoned it in. It didn't do shit when you looked at it. So
I've been using the PS3. I did that video about the store.
Yeah, I saw that.
Half the thing was me looking at the themes.
And there's thousands. There's thousands of themes.
I downloaded the Crazy Taxi one and turned it on. I was like, oh, this was it back then. Is to be able to just go on there, find a game that maybe you were really excited for that was coming up, and it's like, oh, there's a theme. And then maybe it's a dynamic theme like that Uncharted 3 one where it's like the plane in the background that's on fire and like that stuff like that is awesome. And I noticed they sold them a lot too. Like some of them were at $1 to $3. And I actually wonder how much those sold, but it almost feels like it would have been a separate revenue stream for some of these different companies if they put the time in for a good theme. It was just a really cool way for them maybe to market it more or just, I don't know, connect with fans and let them personalize their system, which technically when you personalize your system for an upcoming game, you are now turning your system into an advertising tool if a friend comes over and looks at it. But, still it's, I don't know, I get why people go, man, I really want themes because if you remember any of that, it was, feels like a long time ago now.
It was a long time ago.
Yes,
PS4 had a lot of cool ones. What bothered me about them though? Like a lot of them were like super low res. Like you'd pay like $3 for one, and it just looks like shit. I
saw that Final Fantasy 7 one that people were sharing. I didn't have that on my PS4. People were sharing it on
that one looks good.
Twitter X. It looked really cool. Mm-hmm. And like, man, like that. I know the PS5, as you mentioned, is set up to be more presentable and functional with all the stuff that it tries to put in front of you, and it's all very purposeful. I don't know. Something about it, the way that it's set up, it would, I think, lend itself some really cool background artwork and themes and stuff if they wanted to really do it.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely could. They just don't want to.
I know.
It sucks. We do have a really interesting thing though that popped up. I didn't think they'd do this. I'm sure you're surprised by this as well. PSN accounts on Steam will be optional for some games. Some. So they did make this announcement on the PS blog. So starting off with Spider-Man 2, God of War Ragnarok, The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, and Horizon Zero Dawn Remastered. You don't need a PSN ID. If you do, though, you get some in-game bonuses. And then you can like use the overlay menu, trophies, and friends list and things like that. But I'm surprised. I didn't think they would do this. But what's weird is like, Lost Soul Aside doesn't need one. Midnight Murder Club does still need one. Some of the prior games still need one. So it sounds like maybe this is we're going to test the waters still,
This feels like the way they should have always done it, though, where you get something cool for attaching once they start trying to strong arm and force people into it, then you get that pushback, you get that rejection from it. Whereas if you go, hey, you get cool rewards if you sign in, people might feel like they're choosing to do it. So they're going to, they're fine with it. When you don't have PlayStation Network in your region, then you wouldn't be able to buy these games then. So I think at one point they were going back and trying to make exemptions for certain regions. Then it's like, you might as well make it optional across the board just to account for all of that out of the gate. So maybe that's their plan. Maybe they just had data that showed that it was interfering in a lot of that. So
you would think, I mean, it's the right decision. It's the right decision.
No, it is. It is. Yeah, it is. But I mean, we'll see in the next big PC release. What's the move?
Well, we did have Spider-Man 2 just come out, which I guess the game didn't really, I won't say not do well, but yeah, you wouldn't know it, but two, I guess it's like in rough shape or something. They already had to deploy a hot fix or something. So like which is weird because it's like that was, I think, primarily done by Nixxes again. So you would think it comes out in kind of a good, nice, stable shape,
Yeah, especially since the other Spider-Man games came out fine on PC. I don't know what the deal is with Spider-Man 2 for that, but I mean, I saw all kinds of people were showing stuff breaking. It was crashing constantly. So I don't know if it just wasn't ready to release or something, and they pushed out anyway, and they figured we won't even advertise it, because that was the most telling thing, is they really didn't want to talk about it on the lead up to release, which is weird. So maybe that's what it was, but it's one of those situations where I think Horizon Zero Dawn, when that first went to PC, it had some issues too, but that was like their first real port over. Kind of feels like what this is, as in check in a couple months and see what state it's in, and then maybe buy it. So
check in a couple months. They're fumbling the ball here. It's the whole PSN thing, and now these ports aren't looking too hot on release. I don't know what their deal is. I've always said, like, this is your golden opportunity. Like, ship high quality PC ports. Don't piss off this audience. You're doing everything all the other third parties are doing. So they kind of messed up on that. We do have another like PC rumor that was interesting enough. So this popped up from Icon Era, which was a rumor about the PC versions for GT7 and Demon Souls being canceled. Icon Era, the few times they've posted something were genuine. So they're claiming this is from a trusted member that, was able to vet this through the admins over there. But apparently GT7's PC port was canceled a few months ago, and Demon Souls is just not actively being worked on to begin with. What's interesting is that these games were both on the NVIDIA leak list, which has paid dividends throughout the years. Everything on there was like genuine. So to a degree, these games at some point, if we're humoring the rumor, we're going to come at some point. GT7, I will say this, John, I feel like that actually is plausible, if only because that game gets regular content updates. Like, you can't just give that to a different team, because they're going to have to always maintain it too. So like Polyphony would have to do this in-house. They might just be in a position of like, we'll wait till GT8. Demon Souls, though, I'm a little bit more puzzled by,
Yeah, that Demon Souls feels like one that would go over. Although I will say, the Gran Turismo franchise does feel like one that would actually make a lot of sense on PC. Forza does very well on PC pretty much every time it comes out. And that user base gets really into the racing games. Like, you see all those crazy rigs that they set up with the multiple screens, and like, there is a user base there that is willing to put that kind of money out. So when you have a game like GT, as you're mentioning, that's just constantly churning out content, to buy, and then you have like the microtransaction currency attached to it, and that's basically one of their live service games. So that's the one that it's a little odd that they, I guess, as you're mentioning, maybe the roadmap or just the content pipeline they have wasn't matching up for this for a late port. So maybe GT8, they go, hey, it's day and date, when around PS6 time, we're going to get it on PC at the same time. Because it does seem like there's a lot of potential there for making money. But Demon Souls, I remember when that trailer first went up back then,
Yeah.
and they had to pull it down because the end card was like, it's going to end up on other platforms a year later, something like that. They accidentally put it out and it said something about platform exclusivity, and that was the last we ever heard of it. That was it. So it would be kind of strange to all of a sudden show up with the PC port now, because I don't want to say it feels like they missed their window of opportunity, but I don't really see a lot of people talk about Demon Souls currently. So I guess there would be a lot of excitement for it, but I still think Sony needs to, if they're going to get serious about it, because you just mentioned, what are they doing with the PC port stuff? Because they seem almost like they're waffling a little bit right now after the Spider-Man 2 stuff that's happened. And we hear about these things maybe getting shelved or canceled. They're like doing this half in, half out thing right now with PC. And it's like, you guys just got to take a swing at it and see what happens if you do a day one release for a single player game or something. Just see what happens. And if it doesn't work, then you're like, we'll back off of it. Even if you're partnering with somebody like another company that's not in-house, like you do one of those second party kind of deals and try it with maybe a Sony IP just to see what happens. Cause it just seems so up in the air. They seem almost undecided on if they really want to take the plunge here.
Well, yeah, it does seem like there's a lot of, well, I mean, surely this is what they're doing, is a lot of experimentation, like we'll do this one game, now we'll do another one. The window for how far they've done a console release to the PC one, that window is getting a little bit tighter, and the PSN requirement thing. Now we've got this, what appears to be a pilot program for optional PSN IDs. It seems like they're still sussing it out. Excuse me. I don't know. It's just the thing about Demon's Souls. I mean, it's like FromSoft's so big now. Like they're so popular. Like everyone loves their games, and this is the first Souls game that was birthed on PS3. Like, how is there not like massive upside to shipping that game on PC if that's the whole point of doing it in the first place? So I don't know. It strikes me as a little bit odd, but we had that happen. That rumor popped up. So I did want to also, we'll see. I did want to clarify this. The last episode we talked about the Horizon MMO being possibly canceled. Now you did see the follow up here where I guess it's not canceled. Yeah. So I just wanted to at least clarify that. That was reported by, again, mtn.co.kr, because they called it Project H or Skyline, but I guess it was a mistranslation thing. So somebody on like a forum emailed the writer of that article and said, is Project H the Horizon thing? And they responded saying, no, it's not Horizon. So I don't know. It seems, yeah.
Seems, man, glad that eighth Horizon game is still alive and well.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was getting at in the last episode, though. I'm like, well, that's the whole context of that story was like, NCSoft's in a financial tough spot, so they're canceling all these games that conceivably I think they themselves are trying to bankroll. This would be a game that has financial backing from Sony. So unless Sony pulled out, which it didn't seem like that's what was happening, like I wasn't fully convinced that game was canceled, but I guess we'll see if it ever materializes. They're still in a bad spot. So
yeah, I mean, it seemed like this was going to be part of like I guess mobile phone stuff too for them. So
yeah,
maybe the Horizon you and I would be more interested in is the one that Guerrilla's doing anyway. So this can kind of exist in the peripheral for myself, and I don't know, maybe you, depending. I mean, you seem like your one phone game, I guess, is Pokemon Go. So it's
yeah, and that game is like it's all the IP. The IP is carrying it. I wouldn't be playing if it wasn't the IP.
So that's what I mean. That I know there's a lot of Horizon stuff happening. I know that's kind of the joke, but this might be one that I may not pay attention to as much anyway. But hey, more Horizon. Always here for it.
for the time being. This one apparently is not canceled. I did also want to mention this though, because we have a lot of live service stuff going on, things like that. This I found pretty interesting. There was a post made by the owner of Destiny Bulletin and a writer for
Mm.
the Game Post. They didn't make this a story, but they claimed that they were working on a story late last year, and they heard from a lot of Bungie developers that they were interested in returning to single player projects. But apparently, leadership was firm on live service for the studio's future, and that even smaller, less risky projects or ideas were allegedly shut down right away. I that sounds believable to me, if only
Mhm.
because it could very much just be a handful of people kind of pitching like, hey, why don't we just try this for a little bit or something? Like Bungie's still huge, even after these like 2-3 rounds of layoffs, they're still massive.
Like
So
800 something people, yeah.
yeah, like I'm sure this has definitely been kicked around, but I mean, I guess it poses a bigger conversation topic of like how many sort of existing studios that, let's say, they tried live service or their existing live service, because Bungie has kind of always been this for a long time, right? Multiplayer boxed going into live service, and they
Yep.
transitioned fairly well for a little bit there, but seeing this pivot, maybe people just like, I guess, on the ground employees, leadership clearly still wants to stick to live service, but a lot of people just wanting to get back to something that's like a standard retail game.
Maybe just be able to make a game point A to point B and it actually come to an end and then move on. I feel like, I mean, I don't know because I'm not there. None of us are in the studio. It does kind of feel like that maybe that sensation of burnout where it's just constantly working on the same game, the live service. I'm sure there is some interest in something a bit more creative of like, oh, what if we made a single player game that's still in like the Destiny universe, but it's a story that has like an end to it, a definitive end. You start here, you end here. Like,
Yeah.
that and there might be some value to that anyway in terms of brand and just recognition in general. If you do make a character that has like a good story attached to it and people recognize it going forward, and then it could play into just Destiny in general with the live service aspect. Like you feel like there would be potential there, and maybe that's what they're pitching. But you're right, it's the live service hamster wheel is a real thing until it falls off completely.
Hmm.
So it's, hey, everybody, we're still working on Destiny. It's still a thing. Destiny 2, we're rolling. We need you for that. We can't have you do single player. Or I guess the gummy bears or any of the other little incubation projects that they do that turns out those are probably also live service as well. So
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like, to your point, I think there's some value here. Like, if, let's say, this got greenlit and you see this trailer and it looks really cool and it's like pretty obvious that it looks like a more of a single player campaign, and then you get the Bungie title card, it's like, oh, they're going back to it looks like a campaign style single player game. I think
mhm.
that'd be pretty dope. But apparently, leadership's still not really on board with that idea. So, speaking of leadership, let's get into the shakeup going on at SIE and Sony. So, I'm going to just list off exactly what played out here, because it was it was a press release just going over leadership changes. So, Hideaki Nishino, he'll be appointed to the role of president and CEO of SIE effective April 1st. Herman Hulst will continue to serve as CEO of the Studio Business Group and will report to Nishino. Hiroki Totoki, the current president, COO, and CFO of the Sony Group, will leave his chairman role at SIE and become the president and CEO of the entire Sony Group organization. Kenichiro Yoshida, the current CEO, will step down into a chairman role, and Lin Tao, the current SVP, Finance and Corporate Development and Strategy at SIE, will succeed Hiroki and become the CFO of the Sony Group, and her replacement will be announced at a later date. So those are the actual changes that took place. Right away, the thing that obviously people are focusing on is Hideaki and Herman Hulst. What's interesting to me is like everyone was getting this wrong even before this change. They
Mhm.
kept calling them co-CEOs when they went out of their way to tell people it wasn't a co-CEO thing. They're CEOs of their respective groups, which would be the studio and platform business group. Like that was like a verbatim thing they said was this is not a co-CEO thing, and everyone kept calling them co-CEOs. Um,
Mm.
so and what's really weird about this when I was reading this, I was like sitting here puzzled. I'm like, they're specifically saying Herman is still the CEO of the Studio Business Group, but he'll report to Nishino. Look, to me, this I've read it 1,000 times. This reads to me as we didn't like the two CEO thing. But it's what's
Yeah.
weird. Yeah, what's weird is that they've still got the titles, but it sounds like they just want, as far as SIE is concerned, we want one guy to have the final say. Now, perhaps that says a lot about it not being Herman. So there is like a leash on him, but like I don't know what people are not understanding about this. He has the same role. He is still leading the studios. Um, and how much friction there really is, like, oh, we want another guy to like watch this other guy.
That's kind of what it sounds like.
Yeah, like look, no doubt, I'm sure that's at play. But like if they didn't like Herman's position, like they something would have happened. So he's got to be doing something that they're for the time being okay with. It just sounds like they are okay. Like they want one guy. They didn't like the two CEO thing. It was very much a command and divide. Like you have your lane, I have mine. Now Hideaki is like they just want one guy to be the final say on like certain decisions. It was only a year they did this two CEO thing. Clearly,
Yeah, it was like last May that they
June.
decided to do that.
June it was effective. Yeah, it just sounds like they didn't like it. Now, I think the more, and I'll say concerning thing is Hiroki Totoki. He's a CFO. He was previously a CFO background. He's a bean cruncher. He's a numbers guy, and which anybody could have seen this coming. He was going to get the CEO role of the entire Sony group. I would be more concerned with, like, I think that's the bigger news story here is him taking the CFO position. He's going to be pretty, like, that background is very aggressive because they watch the financials closely. That's his background. Like, this is very different from like when Kaz Hirai, which he was the president and CEO of Sony at the time, Computer Entertainment, he went to be the CEO of the entire Sony group. You had a PlayStation guy leading all of Sony, which as a PlayStation fan that said, oh, a PlayStation guy, like he gets it. He knows this business. He knows why it needs the funding and resources. He gets how games are made. Like he understands that business. When Hiroki took this like chairman role at SIE intermittently, it was, to me, it seemed like, oh, that's him learning the business in a very short amount of time to then lead the entire organization. But he doesn't have a games background. I don't know about you. To me, that's like the more, and I would say concerning news.
Oh, concerning, interesting, because he has like the numbers background. So he's like he's like how at Microsoft, just as an example, because I'm sure they'll come up soon. How Phil Spencer is more like the gaming side, but then Satya Nadella comes in as more the number side, and things change pretty rapidly there.
Yeah.
I hear Hiroki Totoki, and I start thinking about that PC port of GT7 that apparently isn't happening now. It's like, well, hold on a minute. That sounds like money to be made. But you're right. He's someone who's looking for he's already said it, the high margin. Like, how do we do the high margin stuff? How do we get the return on investment immediately? You know, that kind of thing. So, I mean, look, if you look at if you're him right now, and you look at the current setup for competition between them and Xbox, and he already said the PC releases don't seem to be affecting the PlayStation user base. People are still just buying PlayStations because it's kind of like, what else are you going to buy at this point? That's sort of what it's getting to. I mean, if you just want to be real about it. So I think a single player first party multi-plat release is happening, like PC, PlayStation 5. I think that will happen. And I wouldn't be shocked if Hiroki Totoki was like the final big push to get it there. But I don't know. The Herman Hulse thing still, it's clearly that stuck out to everyone, Ryan. That just, many people looked at that and was like, what happened? What's going on over here?
I know, but look, this is just how I see it. I'm not going to pander here. Like, people just hate this guy. I get it.
They kind of do, though, don't they?
Yeah, but I just don't see it that way. Like, I genuinely don't see it that way. If they did not like his role, he wouldn't still be doing it. Like,
that's the thing that gets me. Do you think he just has a contract that's set up to where, well, we're not going to buy him out of it because he still knows how to get games shipped. He might not always pick the best games, so let's get Nishino in front of him so that if he goes, yo, this Concord game, I'm telling you, it's Star Wars for us right here, and he'd look at that, you think he'd be like, Herman, let's put a pin in that one. Let's not get crazy here and start buying studios over it. Maybe it's almost like they put the guardrails up then for Herman Hulst, but not for Nishino, because So Holst has to answer to Nishino now.
He
Whereas
will.
before they would maybe in an equal kind of setting.
Well, that's
Go to
the
agreement and
thing,
stuff.
right? Like it's just so weird how they were doing this. They two CEOs, studio business group,
Right.
platform business group, and that did not last very long at all. It seems like there was friction in some way, and it was like we want one guy to have the final say. And like, yeah, it's telling that it was Hideaki, for which I mean, it could be a number of reasons, but like if he still has the same job, I can't quite get over.
Is
You
Hideaki
know,
the hardware? Hideaki is the hardware guy, right? Isn't that the idea? He's
previously,
the
yeah,
hardware guy.
like more recently, platform experience. He's been with the company since 2000. I mean, so he's got
Right.
seniority. He's
Mhm.
he's Japanese.
Yes.
That's I mean,
And that's
historically
a deal.
that historically that has not stopped them electing, non-Japanese people, but like you just have to consider that.
Right.
So, like again, I'm not going to buy into this whole like we don't like Herman Hulse thing. He's still there, got the same role. I just it reads to me as we want somebody to have final say. I mean, the Hiroki thing, John, my concern is not even like PC stuff or anything. Like he's a very financially, savvy guy that watches that stuff closely, which he's watching the studios, their headcount. And he just recently during the that corporate strategy meeting talking about the use of AI and wanting to use it for asset generation and QA. Like I would have genuine concern for like the studios, you know, them asking for layoffs or like maybe a studio closure. I mean, because it's going to come from the very, very top at that point. He doesn't have a PlayStation background. I think that's the more concerning news here.
Interesting you mentioned this with the numbers guy here. So when the decision you think was made for the chain of command almost here between Herman Holst and Nishino, do you think it was Hiroki Toki putting in the suggestion or the guidance for how maybe that structure should be at SIE?
Yeah,
Yeah.
perhaps, yeah. I mean, well,
Do you
Kenichiro is still in place, but like Hiroki's way up. He's in the conversation for all this stuff, obviously.
do you think the timing for Concord and then this is coincidence? It looks weird, doesn't it, from the outside? It's like, okay, they're co-CEOs, and then months later, Concord gets announced. We run on this whole thing to where Concord comes out, gets pulled back in a week later, and then the story breaks that it cost them 300, maybe $400 million. They shutter a studio after buying them, a year or two ago or something. And now Herman Holst has to answer to somebody when it comes to some of these decisions. That just
Well,
the
let me
lineup of events is like,
let me throw this at you, John. What if
okay.
let's say Concord comes out? I'm not going to say it like let's not that it did amazing, but let's say it did okay.
Mhm.
Maybe like a little bit worse than Helldivers 2. Like it finds an audience, it's still out, it's going through season 2 now or some shit. I don't know what the case is. Let's say the game didn't fail. Do you still make this change and also you make Herman the guy that has the final
Hmm.
no, like I don't think you do that. Cuz Hideaki's he's got the platform experience. He's been with the company since 2000. Again, I don't know how much it plays into it, but he's Japanese. Like you don't give that to Herman, even if
Hmm.
Concord does well, even if all these other games do well for that matter. I think. I don't know. I again I agree that like it's very clear like there's some friction, and I would also agree that like somebody should have answered to the Concord that like I don't know what it is behind the scenes, but you would think somebody has to take the rap for this, but seemingly that's just not happening. I mean, if you want to call it this, then maybe.
Hmm.
But even if Concord did like reasonably well, I don't think you're giving that job to Herman.
I think you're right in that there are a lot of people who just don't like, because there was definitely celebration online when this happened. People were like, it was like an exciting day for people over this whole thing. Which
For him to have the same job. Let's make that clear. The same job.
I mean, yeah, basically he's seeing over all the studios, and that I mean that should kind of be as the I guess he was doing a bit more work in the sense of green lighting and putting, obviously, I guess he was talking about buying Firewalk and like, because there was all that report around him really hyping up Concord internally and stuff. And maybe that was the idea of, hey, you're good at getting these games out, clearly, because you worked with Guerrilla to make Horizon, and games have been coming out under his watch that are good,
Yeah.
right? And that's a difficult thing to oversee all these studios, get the games to the finish line, have them come out, and at times win Game of the Year and stuff. That's not easy to do. So we don't want to lose you in general, like for everything you can do. But hey, you want to greenlight another Concord? Maybe you talk to Nishino first, like that kind of thing. That's just kind of how it feels like looking at it from here. Like he has the same position, yes, but maybe on his his little job description of duties, maybe they erased one thing when it came to like throw money at this thing.
So look, it looks like that, right? But he got this job in 2019.
Mhm.
You've got Jim Ryan, who's making a lot of shots there. You got to think about the corporate structure. What does Jim Ryan want? What does the guy above him want? And so what does that mean for the guy that has to run the studios? So what do they have to press forward with, which is live service games? Arguably, the point I was making before is, with all these live service cancellations, who's in charge of that right now? I mean, you would like to think, and I try to be a glass half full guy, it might be a course correction that is being spearheaded by Herman, potentially. Again, you still don't necessarily want to not try to make some live service games, but the company's learning the hard way. You just have to think about the corporate structure here. Guy X, Y, and Z wants this. That means the guy below it has to make that happen. The guy below that has to make it happen. So, I mean, I'm not saying I don't love Herman Hulst, mind you. I thought he was a good pick at the time. Obviously, it's a little bit questionable now, but sometimes you just have to suss out exactly how these events are playing out. If Herman left in a year, and let's say it was not amicable, wouldn't be surprised at all. Not even a little bit. However, if he stays for another 5 years, I could see that happening too. Honestly, it's both ways for me. I'm kind of neutral on the guy.
I mean, I wouldn't, I can't say he maybe wasn't left with some tough situations with Jim Ryan apparently greenlighting as many live service games as humanly possible at one point, as people were pointing at hey, these games take a while to make. Seemed like the big push was live service as they were starting this generation up. And then I guess Herman Hulst was left with a lot of those to try to deal with and figure out. And I mean, his credit, it seemed like they were canceling a lot that may have just been bad, but, or they weren't able to support them afterwards. They didn't want to go through what would have been a nightmare scenario with the press and games shutting down after they were public, because then you can't write them down. And there's all that stuff there, I'm sure, with corporate tax structures and stuff. But it's tough when it's a lot of that kind of news coming out and you're the one in charge and it's attached to your name. And then this happens because, yes, clearly then people are going to go, well, he got demoted because all this stuff happened. Now he does kind of have a boss where he didn't before, technically. So
yeah, that's true. That's true.
I guess he technically, in the literal sense, yes, he got a new boss. So I guess technically moved down the chain of command structure. But you're right. He's still just doing the same thing he was doing before, which is going to studios, making sure they're on track to release their games.
It could be saving face, because they again, the press release says he's still the CEO of the studio business group. That's the title. The title is still CEO.
It's still the CEO, but you answer to me, the other CEO.
Yeah, dude, it could be a saving face thing. I'm not going to say that's not happening. It could be exactly what people think it is. I just find it's a bit noteworthy that they only tried this 2 CEO thing for so long. And of course the guy that's one's obviously going to get picked to do this job,
yes,
versus the other. I find.
I mean, you can look at it that way. They probably put them next to each other and they're like, all right, without maybe even just spelling it out for them. All right, we'll see how you guys do in the next 8 months. Then we'll decide. And I guess if you step back and look, let's say Nishino is the hardware person, the platform person or whatever. And then Herman Hulst clearly is more of the game, the software person. Right now, you probably would pick the hardware person just based on what we've been seeing from the outside looking in with a lot of the reports around cancellations, live service struggles, etc. Whereas the PS5 Pro comes out, seems fine. It's just rolling. That's what I mean. It doesn't seem like the hardware division is, I don't say struggling as much as software, because clearly they're still putting games out that are winning Game of the Year and that kind of stuff, and they're making money on that. But it doesn't have the same issues and stuff we see in the press. So the hardware seems to be the strong suit at that point, if you had to pick between the two.
Very true. We'll see how it shakes out. I mean, they're going to make this change April 1st. We'll see how long this lasts.
So hold on, what you think Hiroki Toki's the main concern you have there is he might just start trimming down some of the headcount and budgets and stuff?
I just think, everyone's focused on the Herman Hulse thing. I'm sure there's a lot to be said there, which we did. But like, I think the real news is you've got Toki-san moving into and that the writing was on the wall there, just full disclosure, because he had like 3 different roles. He was chairman of SIE for a little bit, interim CEO. Like, that's basically him learning that field, basically being trained before he takes over the whole thing. He's a CFO guy. He doesn't get games like a Kaz Hirai did. Like that was always great news back then. You had a PlayStation guy leading all of Sony. Like, he got PlayStation. Everyone loved Kaz back then.
I don't really see him that different from Jim Ryan, though. Jim
Hiroki?
Ryan wasn't really he didn't really play a lot of games either like that, or didn't seem like the PlayStation guy in the sense of.
No, but he had results. I mean, everyone loves to hate Jim Ryan. Dude, he's the reason PlayStation like fucks in Europe. Like, there's just no getting around it. He wasn't a public facing guy up until like they had to start doing that. Also got to think too, like, this fucking old ass guy from, I forget where he's from, but like, oh great, now I got to like get in front of a camera and introduce a video game live stream. Like,
no one asked him to hold a controller before he got on stream either. See how he does it. Oh, it's too late. The camera's on.
I generally, I want like games people in video games. That's a lot of what it is. But you definitely have corporate guys that are in it too. Like Reggie Fils-Aimé, he did it like play games growing up or whatever. But like corporate wise, he was like working at Pizza Hut and shit like that before working at Nintendo.
There's video of him playing Smash Brothers and Wii Sports and.
Yeah, a lot of Xbox was corporate too. Like, their beginnings were a lot of corporate guys. They weren't gamers, So it's generally, I want gaming people in games, but sometimes you still get results from the finance guys.
Yeah.
So
that's true. As long as they basically have to say, okay, I got to hire the people who are into the games and have that creative mind. I'll take care of the numbers. So I'd like to think, with how involved Toki's been, as you mentioned, all these different roles, probably understands that. Hire the right people and deal with the numbers. But that's the thing. When he's looking at the numbers, it's all like just paper and numbers in front of him. He's not really maybe thinking of that PlayStation side of the brain when it comes to some of these things.
Well, I would just hate for like, studio closures to happen. I never want to see that happen. And I think everybody is still concerned with like what's going to happen with Bend or Media Molecule.
Yeah,
and it's like
Ben's the big one.
Yeah, Ben, you would think they're in a good spot just because of like geographically that studio can't be as expensive to operate as like say the ones in California or Seattle or something. But you just never know. Like, if they close now, I'd hate to see it, but you got to look at like what Hiroki's said recently, his background. That's my concern.
Wasn't he criticizing Bungie and how they were being run as well at one point?
Well, yeah. Well, like when he got the interim CEO position, he was doing like site visits. And I don't know, like not a lot of people said like exactly what the impression was of him, but he seems friendly or whatever, but I don't know. There's concern. I'll leave it there.
Okay.
I will leave it there. Here's some more concern. Well, I don't want to say concern, but more people leaving. Insomniac's Ted Price. He is retiring. Ted Price, after 30 years, the founder and president of Insomniac Games, has announced his retirement from the industry coming up in March. In his place, very interestingly, we're doing a 3.
Go ahead, say it.
3 co-studio.
Finally.
Chad Dezern, Ryan Schneider, and Jen Huang will become Insomniac Games' new co-studio heads. So that's interesting. Now, maybe people at Insomniac could speak more on that. I don't know what the real thought process is. it sounds like maybe Ted just that's how he wanted to go out, was like, if somebody's gonna take my place, like it's a big workload, maybe we need to like divide this up or something. I don't know what the case is, but I've heard nothing but good things from all three of these people. So we'll see. Ted's an OG, 30 years.
Yeah,
So,
that's crazy.
dude, I've seen so many interviews and discussions and he did that Game Maker's Notebook podcast that I listened to a few times. Really fascinating dude, man. I've never heard a bad thing about Ted Price. Like he's one of the genuine, like good ones that like he's sort of earned his way out the door here.
It kind of, we just talked about the co-CEO thing for PlayStation and Sony. And then we talk about this with three different people kind of running Insomniac at the top. But you also think about Insomniac and what their output's been. And then also the fact that they are in charge of kind of the Marvel relationship between Sony and Marvel. Like that relationship is super important. So it wouldn't shock me if one of these people is like mostly attached and focused on that. Then you have someone with really looking into Ratchet and Clank and other endeavors. So it does seem like he had a lot going on at Insomniac, like an insane amount to where it's kind of hard to believe that he was able to deal with a lot of that stuff. But he did it, as you mentioned, for like 30 years. Like that's super impressive. So it almost feels like Insomniac is in a position where I don't say it's turnkey because it's clearly not. There's a lot that happens there, but it does seem like a more comfortable place where he can kind of step away. Sony owns Insomniac, like they're kind of running things with them. They already have them again linked up to Marvel. We saw the leaks. There's a lot more Marvel stuff coming. We assume still that's in place. So it does seem like a good spot for him to kind of step away as he gets older, 30 years in the business. And he even mentioned he can't really play games in his position this whole time without basically going to QA test mode. So
yeah, he's got to be excited. He said he wants to like be a fan and just be in the back and start playing games. I don't blame him. Maybe he's got a backlog. I'd love to hear what it is. Love to hear what he wants to.
Gotta have a backlog.
Well, like there's some people are like, yeah, I'm not even touching games anymore. Like Michelle on Cell.
Yeah, that's true.
I was in games for years and I have not touched that shit since. Like he just doesn't want to even look at games anymore.
Man.
Oh man, good on Ted though. 30 years, dude. That's one of those like started within the industry when it was like basically a new thing, young kid forming Insomniac and built it into a powerhouse. It's insane.
Yep.
In the meantime, we do have some words on Marvel's Wolverine in light of this recent change. I don't even know why they really did this, but the incoming Insomniac leadership were interviewed by Variety, of all things. So goddamn weird how they do this nowadays.
I know.
Fucking Variety.
GQ always threw me off too.
GQ, just like legacy media. We got a comment from Marvel's Wolverine. A comment about Marvel's Wolverine from Chad DeZern, where they would not confirm or deny a 2025 release. They basically said, what did you say here? You said, we've announced Wolverine. We'd like to talk more about it. But like Logan today, and we have to remain very stoic until it's time to pop the claws down the road. Very, very on the nose there. I mean, yeah, we saw some things that kind of gave us an answer on that. So it seems like it's still a 2026 game.
Yeah, I think it is 2020. And it's a shame because it feels like we saw the teaser for it forever ago now.
I mean, but you know what? We might see it this year. Not release, but maybe we'll see it this year. More.
It wouldn't shock me if it was like a first half of 2026 kind of release. And I guess maybe this year that Venom game shows up.
Well, let's talk about this, John. We have a state of play that might be happening very soon during Valentine's week because one Mr. Nate the Hate did say this on Twitter. He kind of teased that like, oh, the next state of play might be happening during Valentine's week. And you look at the dates, maybe that's like a Thursday, so like right before Valentine's Day. He's still doubling down on that. I mean, you think? I mean, what are we going to see at this thing, huh? Surely they are going to have
look like the Riddler. Why can't why does it got to be like this?
Why is it got to be so cryptic?
This is what your heart say. I'm gonna mess him right now.
It's so stupid, right? It's so stupid. It is one of those. It is one of those like, oh, I know something and I have to phrase it like this kind of things.
Nah, Nate's the kind of guy who like who talks like himself and calls himself one.
What did we say last episode? Like they did one late January and like
Mhm.
February, like 2 years in a row. So I'm sure they will
Yeah.
hold one very soon. So
Yep. So we're expecting next week at some point, most
yeah.
likely. So which I wonder if they would just announce it to kick off next week then, like Monday, or if they close out this week with the announcement for the following. So would they announce it on Thursday or Friday for the following week, Valentine's Day week, or would they just show up Monday or Tuesday and be like, hey, it's happening Wednesday or Thursday or whatever?
I'm pretty sure like the because everyone likes to like dive back at the previous ones to get some sort of like connect the numbers, Mason. What does it mean? Like they usually do like to have a tighter window on state of plays. They don't do like a prior weekend for the next one sort of thing. They'll
Right.
it's you like actually I think the last few ones it was like, oh, tomorrow we're gonna do
Yeah.
one. So
Wouldn't shock me if Monday or Tuesday next week they announce it for the following day or something.
something like
So
that.
that's maybe that's what we'll expect that then. I'm thinking, but yeah, but the feeling is next week there'll be a state of play, and I mean that's the thing though with these state of plays. We're always still trying to judge with state of play how much stuff is really going to be there. It seems like state of plays are still kind of all over the place. Sometimes, man, Sony just shows up with a couple, like a bunch of announcements. Sometimes they're not there at all. Like it's difficult to really pin down. It was easy when they were like, "Hey, a showcase." It's like, "Oh, well, okay, yeah, there's gonna be a lot of cool stuff here." Sometimes state of play is a few games and like, oh, they're gonna show a deep dive on maybe Ghost Yote or something. So
Yeah.
it's it's tough to predict these things still, I feel like. So I guess if I'm just looking at Sony themselves now going into this, we'd be like, well, okay, Blue Point and Bend are off the board. So if we can remove them, then I guess I feel like unless there's some crazy secret project we didn't know about with Blue Point or Bend, I assume they're kind of restarting. Okay, so if that's the case, we need a release date for Ghost Yote. It's coming out this year, as
De-
they've said.
Death Stranding
Uh,
too.
Death Stranding 2, that's another one that we need a release date for. They mentioned at Tokyo Game Show we'd find out the release date here as we got into 2025. So I still think that might end up being like a fall release, Death Stranding 2. What do you think?
Fall, huh?
You think you think it's fall that far into the year?
I would have thought summer. Sometime
Yeah,
in the
summer.
summer.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Maybe.
So let's just I mean, I still assume Venom's coming out. So like that'd be a holiday release for which they might not even have to tell us until maybe a state of play over the summer or something technically for something like that. Fair games.
Fair games.
Look, man, we gotta rip the band-aid off at some point for this thing, okay? We gotta just get this going.
I don't think that game is that far along. I mean, it'd probably be I would think the Horizon multiplayer game. And then it
Horizon multiplayer
ships
game.
and then it
That's a
ships
good
in the
one.
summer, yeah.
Yep.
Kinda like a Concord situation, like, "Hey, here's, like, the formal reveal. Oh, and by the way, you can play it very soon."
I think that might be one of their best shots for like a live service game here coming up. That and what they did with Helldivers 2. I don't know if it'll be Helldivers 2 level, but I think should be a good release for Horizon and just Sony's live service ambition in general.
I'm surprised you
Mm,
have such an optimistic viewpoint for that game.
well, no, because I think it's going to remove the big weak spot for Horizon for a lot of people, and that's Aloy.
Jeez.
I mean,
I
every
don't
time it comes up, she is the thing that's pointed out as being the weakness.
and maybe that's what you see a lot of. I like the genuine complaints I see is like, oh, I don't care for like it feels like a sort of spruced up Ubisoft game. Like, oh, it's
Mm,
just kind of a big checkpoint style game. I just like, yeah, I see people complain about Aloy, but to me, like the concerns that crop up a lot, which it's all anecdotal. You can never put a number on that thing. The game sells,
right.
so like clearly these are people just being vocal, which are sort of taking up the air as far as like how the franchise really is perceived. That's what I see a lot of. But like,
Disappointing to Shuhei.
sure, disappointing to Shuhei. I can't believe this game only sold 8 million copies. It's insane. What do
That's
you
so funny.
mean? I can't believe that shit. But like that's the thing, John. I'm
Yeah.
surprised you have such an optimistic outlook. I love Horizon. I think this thing is probably gonna not do well at all.
Oh, no, really? I'm just picturing like that Monster Hunter kind of setup with like 4 or 5 people in a room taking down some of these really big like robot dinosaur
Yeah, but you
animals.
know what? I'm just kind of like in a place where I feel like everything's just gonna just fall on its face. Like it doesn't matter what it is. Like unless you're a Marvel
I thought you're the
Rivals,
you're the half glass full guy. What happened here?
dude, I try to be, but like I can't. I'm not gonna just change my opinion for the sake of it. Like it's just it's everything is failing, dude. Everything. There's just how do you crack that top 10 black hole, like the black hole style games? You just can't like nothing can do it. The only thing that could was a Marvel game. And it was like, oh, it's actually good gameplay too. God forbid the gameplay was actually bad. The game might actually be Helldiver 2 levels, which even that's still good. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of insane just how hard it is to pull people away from those like 5 to 10 games that is just eating up everybody's time.
It
I
is. It is
and
like a Fortnite or Warzone or anything like that. Yeah,
and
it's impossible.
if you're telling me Horizon's going to do that, I'm sorry. I love Horizon. I think that's a tough sell.
It'll be harder because I assume it's a $40 game. Like it's not free.
Maybe it won't.
That'll make things more difficult.
Maybe it won't. Maybe they I don't want to say learn their lesson because like Helldivers 2 did work as a $40 game. But maybe, there would be a change in decision making prior to the game launching at that point.
Like a free to play Horizon multiplayer game. Interesting.
I mean, it's so weird with the Concord thing though, because it's like, yeah, it costs $40, but you just had Helldivers 2 do it, and it was excellent. And everybody loved that, like it was an upfront cost, but then you got a full experience. So
yeah.
I don't know. You can't just like say that was a problem for Concord when they just had a successful $40 game with Helldivers 2, right? Like it's kind of like every circumstance is different. Would maybe be the better way to put it.
Well, hey, Herman Holtz believes in it. I say we bring out Horizon multiplayer.
That is a game that is likely so far along that like it doesn't like it's a train and you can't stop at that point. Like no, don't pull the lever. Let's just
by the end of the year he might have another boss.
Let's just ram this thing into this train station. All right.
No, I think it could be fun though. I do. I'm more hopeful for that than Fair Games. I'll say that.
I thought you were actually like you were optimistic on that too, because you're like, oh, well, it's a different genre, and if they handle this genre well, like Payday 3, that's PS Plus Essential, right? That game did awful, right? Didn't it do like it? Was
I haven't even checked in on it in a long time. I have not heard anyone talk about it. I could technically download it on PS Plus to check in. It was bad at launch, and that first impression did a lot of damage.
Well, I believe it was you that made this point of, but Fair Games could actually do well in that genre.
It could. Yeah. If they actually get it right, but I gotta be. The more I've thought about it, and the more I've seen the trailer again and again and again, and the fact that we haven't seen it in so long.
Well, I don't think that trailer is any actual indication of like what it's actually going to play like. I just can't stand trailers like that, man. It's like, what are we doing? It's goofy. There's no gameplay. I know it's like a mission statement. Like, here's what it's like, what we're proposing to you. But like, just, I don't know. I like seeing gameplay.
The Concord situation has made me reevaluate a lot of the stuff from Sony when it comes to these live service games and the judgment from Herman Holst. So I'm sorry, it does. You look at it, you go, oh, the Concord thing was, because then you go, okay, hold on a minute. What did he think of Fair Games? And then you keep kind of going down the list, and you're like, oh man, maybe they brought it back in, and they're like, we gotta reevaluate some of this stuff and see if we can figure it out. Because
but they did. The reevaluation has happened. That's why so many were canceled.
Yeah. I mean, Fair Games seems like it's still on. So
as far as we know, it's still chugging along. But like, I would not be surprised if we woke up tomorrow and not only is it canceled, like the studio's gone. Like I hate saying that, but like they've actively been in this reevaluation process.
Right.
12 something games by fiscal year 25. Ain't no way. We're like six are gone. Well, but like the point I've made before is like, do you want all 12 to come out and it's even worse? Or do you course correct after 2 years, count your losses and
Yeah.
It's taking the better of the two options.
Any PC port that you're thinking of here, Ryan? Anything that might be left? Because they seem to do this at a lot of state of play. Every time we tune into a state of play, it's like, hold on, let me tell you about this PC port that's coming.
I feel like there was only 1 or 2 PC ports that showed up during state of plays. I could be wrong about that, but I almost feel like they actually show up other places.
That's true. They could be at like Jeff Keighley's show or something.
Yeah, I think so. But I could obviously be wrong. I don't have like the spreadsheet here of where they announce these things. Just going off memory. I think like the state of play could be a lot of cool third-party stuff if they're not ready for like PlayStation Studio announcements, but I think there will be a few. I mean, RE9's like what everyone wants to hear about, right?
Yep. I was thinking RE9 as well. It's on track. It seems like this is about the time you'd expect them to announce it. And then also we need a date for Metal Gear Solid Delta. And I know that's bounced between PlayStation and Xbox, but to be honest, it's probably just Konami taking money from everyone and it's like, yeah, whatever, you can show it. So we need a release date. So
I keep forgetting about that game. I keep forgetting about that game. It's got that's
time to remind people.
Time to remind people. It could absolutely show up here as well. And the great thing is that when Sony confirms these things, they do tell us right away. Here's, third-party stuff, PSVR 2, because yes, it's still a thing, or PlayStation Studios. So we'll find out soon. Very soon.
Okay. Yeah, it's just it's up in the air right now for the state of play, and I'm hoping they got some good stuff to set up the year. Because if Ghost Yote is not getting dated soonish, that maybe you think that's second half of the year. It's like
I mean, if it doesn't show up, if it doesn't show up like within the first quarter of this year, you would assume it's probably second half.
Yeah,
because it's like a much tighter window now of like when they start ramping up the trailers and all that before it actually ends up coming out.
Well, they have a lot of other stuff that's showing up soon. Oh, here's a question.
Oh, John's cooking
for state of play. Does Microsoft show up?
You know what?
I mean, I'm serious.
Well, I'm inclined to say no, if only because they just decided to do most of these things on their own time. Because we have those announcements.
We're still missing one though.
Well, do you think that's ready? Do you think that's ready?
One of them's coming out this year.
Actually, this is news to me. Which one's coming out this year, John?
Master Chief Collection is coming out this year.
Is it this year?
It's coming out this year.
Do you know this?
That's my understanding.
Oh, really? I didn't think it was that soon.
That's the word that's going around.
Wow, they're moving fast on this stuff. Do you want to just get into this? I'll scroll down. I'll scroll down here. So there is like a little bit of buildup here. So we had this thing where like Phil Spencer, Microsoft CEO of gaming. Honestly, I don't even know why this is news because it keeps. I don't know how many times this guy can say this and it makes headlines. But he was speaking on Gamertag Radio. It's a good show, but they talked with Phil again. So he said, and I quote, "We love our platform and our hardware, but we're not going to put walls up where people can engage with great games our studios are building." We also had him on Destin Legary's channel. Destin asked like straight up, "Can you solidify that Starfield is staying put for the time being?" And his answer was no. Then he like did a spiel like about, I don't know, the same shit that I just said. So the point is we had those two things happen. It's like what, days later? Forza Horizon 5, excuse me. Coming this spring to PlayStation 5, developed by Panic Button in partnership with Turn 10 and Playground Games. It's going to have the same content as the Xbox and PC version. All previous car packs and expansions will be available for purchase. So it's not like this like full complete thing and you're getting bonus content or something. You still got to like buy that shit if you want. But this spring, and they're also working on a new free content update for all versions called Horizon Realms. And then like this was today, Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition coming this spring, and then Age of Mythology Retold coming March 4th.
Yep.
So this was what we were waiting on, like is like the Xbox IP, like the big three, we call it, right? Your Forza, Gears, Halo. Plus there's, and I didn't even write this shit. I didn't even write this down, John. There was like 15 something rumors going on about, oh, well, it's now this game and this game and this game and the same stuff we keep hearing. Your
Yep.
Halo, your the initiative hiring for multi-platform
Perfect Dark.
experience. Yeah, Perfect Dark. Like,
Fable.
so like I don't know how many times we can make this news. It's this is their Sega moment.
Yeah, they're just putting stuff everywhere now. It's become super obvious, and you could tell Phil was getting real kind of annoyed because he gets that question every time he goes at like any of these things.
How
And
many times can he answer this? How many times can he say it?
I think it's just because it's still so weird for a lot of us who have been observing games for so long, going back to the old days and stuff to now. It's always been that traditional, you make games for specific platforms to sell the platform. Like that's
Mhm.
what it's been. And maybe it was more interesting a couple generations ago, even when it was all unique and different, weird hardware configurations. And now it's like, okay, everyone's using an AMD. Well, Microsoft and Sony are using AMD chips and they're pretty close to each other in terms of the setup and the hardware. So it's not as, oh, what can the cell do that Microsoft's processor and GPU and the 360 can't do? And we're not really we don't really have that anymore. So the lines are kind of being blurred, but when it comes to the exclusivity stuff and how necessary I guess it is, and Microsoft is like, who cares? We're putting this everywhere, and they were the biggest publisher on PlayStation's platform in December,
Yep.
which
It
is
was like
ridiculous. It's like, what?
65% or something of their sales were on the PlayStation versions, which I guess happens when you acquire Activision.
Yeah, that's the thing. That was obviously a tipping point for them. Like they spent so much money on Activision Blizzard that it's very clear that the higher ups like Satya Nadella was like, hold on a minute. We got to start making some money, guys. And how do they do that? They move games to PlayStation, where it's very clear that yes, people on PlayStation do seem to buy a lot more than users on Xbox. And we see the splits all the time. It comes out from reports in Europe and the reports in the NP or Circana now. And as we just saw with that publishing report there, to where it's just PlayStation. If you put the games there, typically they'll end up selling better. I mean, there's more PlayStation consoles, so you'd
There's
expect
more
that.
consoles. Yeah.
And it's also not on a Game Pass subscription service on the platform.
Yep.
So Microsoft is basically just taking advantage of the PlayStation platform at this point, and they are just flooding that platform. My gosh, did you see the list of games that they technically are putting out now in the first 6 months of this year? Well, we're into February now. In the next 5 months, it's quite significant, and they keep announcing games.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess there's that distinction, right, of like the third-party publishers that they acquired that were, previously doing PlayStation stuff versus the in-house Xbox studios that were never doing PlayStation stuff and now they are.
Yeah,
That the Forza Horizon one is like that was the first like big Band-Aid pull or the big tearing it
but
off and yeah.
even like Ninja Gaiden 4 back in the day, Microsoft would have just secured that for their Xbox. That'd have been that. It's like, yeah, we're publishing this. They're the ones funding it. And they'd be like, yep, the original Xbox showed up. Guess what? Ninja Gaiden Black or Ninja Gaiden, that was just on the Xbox. That's the way it was. Kind of same thing with Ninja Gaiden 2, and that showed up on the 360. It was like specific to the 360 for a time.
Mhm.
So it's the situation where maybe even they feel a bit more like they can make those kind of risks because they'll sell it on PlayStation and eventually they'll sell it on the Switch. You know what kind of floodgate is going to open when Nintendo lets these third parties talk about the Switch 2 with Microsoft? My gosh, they're just going to all of a sudden Switch 2 logos are going to appear on all their games. Like it's going to be
Yeah.
crazy. So Microsoft, I don't know what's going to happen with them in the future when it comes to hardware. No one does because we've never seen this before. But hey, they're about the PlayStation owners are basically going to get everything from Microsoft at this point. And yes, that does include Halo. And what a weird world it would be is if that state of play, the lights go out and then the Halo theme plays and Master Chief's on screen with a PlayStation logo. How weird would that be?
I think what would be weird about that is knowing that they've sort of I don't want to say mend the relationship, but like obviously they would never have done that prior. So it means there was a definitely this like dialogue between the two companies that they had never had before of not only doing games on a competitor but like this conscious choice of like, it would be really cool if we take your game and incorporate it in our show. Like that's taking it to, I would argue, a step well beyond what we would have thought. Cause like, yeah, we're seeing all these games come over, but like I that would be like if you want to talk about what would be like really big news, that would be like kind of nutty. It's like, wow, they actually like were okay, you know, putting that together is letting the
Right.
Halo theme like fire off during a live stream, and then you see Halo like that would be definitely surprising to me. But I was not under the impression that the game was coming this year, so that's news to me. So Master Chief this year, huh?
That's the word. And so they either go to State of Play with it or they go to the Switch 2 conference with it. I mean, either way, they're gonna get a bunch of eyes on their. I assume Microsoft's gonna try to get both of them. It's like gonna
Oh
be a State of
yeah.
Play. We're gonna be at Switch 2 event. It's gonna be great. We're everywhere.
Okay, so would you are you also do you are you aware if it is like a Switch 2 thing for the Master Chief collection? Is
Yeah,
that
it's going to the Switch
okay?
2 as well. Yep.
Okay. I see then I'd be more inclined to say that would show up at like because Nintendo's fine with they've accepted games from both of them now for like
Yep.
directs. So I would
And that's gonna be
almost
a
think
massive event. So it's like
it'll be
get there
big.
somehow.
I
Be there in some way.
Yeah, I actually would be more inclined to say that maybe it would show up there. I'm not it's weird, right? Because Sony's like, they're not saying no to these games, like, when they're submitted it for in their on the dev portal, they're not rejecting these games, but at the same time, they're not, like, you know, being this forthcoming where, like, it's a part of, like, a state of play or something. That we haven't really seen.
I wonder if that is weird to Sony, where they look around and they're like, hold on a minute, Microsoft's releasing how many games on our platform? Like, we gotta start putting some games out too, right? Because it is that sense of wow, they're kind of like overrunning our platform right now with their
Well,
brand.
I'm just, like I'm really curious, like, what and we're talking, like, senior leadership at this point, like, what do they think of how this is like, how what's the word, like, right now with
Mm,
how they feel about this? Because like, to your point, they've got a lot of leverage. They're a big publisher now, but it's still like, how could you not feel good about them basically giving up? I
yeah,
mean, that's the weird uncharted territory of like, yeah, this is a Sega moment, but it's not a Sega moment in that they're still committing to hardware. And what does that look like for the next Xbox? And
yeah.
how committed they are to selling that machine if they open it up to like third party manufacturers, which would be even more weird. And then also, if they're not selling enough of them, what does that mean for third parties? I mean, you got to have an install base to make it worth shipping a game to them. There's just so many unknowns. Like,
So
is Sony okay with it? Like, are they sitting here like drinking tea, going hell yeah, or are they sitting there going like this is concerning because they're becoming a really big publisher?
what I think their strategy, because that was the biggest purchase in Microsoft history, was this Activision Blizzard purchase. So now it's like high level stuff for them. I've theorized about the strategy for them next generation, even just in the future. They basically eliminate generations and they transition to being a software company fully, and that includes Xbox, not necessarily just being the hardware, but being the OS. And the OS is licensed, but also to like third parties, so they can make their own Xbox or whatever. But also, it integrates fully into Windows. So they're like this weird Windows Xbox hybrid kind of software, and they count all Windows machines as like an install base.
Oh God, yeah, that's a
So that's how you sell to third parties to still make for your platform. And I think that's the biggest technical upgrade as they're kind of pushing it that we've ever seen, is that they do start to become more OS level and they figured things out so that it sets up nicely when it comes to system requirements. And maybe they do utilize AI in some way to kind of smooth out some of that transition for if you get a new video card or it detects your system, here are the games your system can handle, that kind of stuff. But that's how you pitch it to indie devs, to big AAA developers, that sort of thing. It's all tied into one.
mhm. That's yeah, I it's a valid point. I could see what maybe that's the approach they would take. Dude, there's just so many unknowns. It's a
Yeah.
fascinating thing to see play out. But I mean, yeah, it's weird. It is definitely weird, but I don't know how many times they can say this and it not be
Well,
news.
I think they need to get to next gen so it becomes clear for everyone. That's I think what needs to happen. We're in this weird in between period because I've noticed Microsoft the past 2 generations, I think they've shifted course in the middle of it. So if you look at the Xbox One, they started out with a camera that was required, the Kinect. They started out with DRM and TV and no used games. And like they had all these crazy ideas going into E3 and they had to backtrack on a lot of that. And then even as they worked through that generation, they got rid of the Kinect as being even somewhat of a focus. And then they decided, no, we do want the most powerful system this generation. So they made the Xbox One X. All right. And now they're looking at the Xbox Series. They start off as the traditional system that's going to try to get them back to, yes, we have the most powerful system at launch. We also have the Xbox Series S. And yes, we have games that are tied specifically to the platform. And we're going to make a big push here. We'll buy studios. And now they have to pivot again into what I think is going to be less focus on hardware and like this OS stuff that we'll find out more about in probably 2026. Like next year, I think they're going to start talking about it.
Mm.
So they keep pivoting halfway through and can't quite get their vision all
Yeah,
the way done.
I mean, it's the Xbox story. It's all an unfocused mishmash of initiatives and U-turns, and also like how to Game Pass play into all of that,
Yeah.
which
Game
was
Pass,
them,
I think, too.
yeah, doubling down on that. And now in recent years too, they've kind of not walked away from Game Pass, but like, there's
Kind of.
some questionable things that they're doing now with that. So it's just an unfocused mess. I mean, if to circle back around to PlayStation, they've always been very conservative, as in like this is how the console business is: a box, exclusive games, and some exclusivity from some of your favorite franchises, and we'll lock those up. And I mean, they still have very much done that with this machine as well. PS5, arguably, they've had to do this more because games take so long to make, but you've seen them also lock up third parties plenty of times now to sort of fill out that portfolio. I mean, but it's still been a very conservative one box. This is there's the one thing you can't say about PlayStation is they've not been focused. It's very direct as far as like how they've always approached it. And it's paid off for them. Microsoft's just been in such a weird spot. And now they've got this whole financial U-turn that is, I would still say, very unpredictable.
Yeah.
What is that? The next 2 years is going to be nuts for them.
Yeah,
For
we
2
just
years.
I don't even think sometimes I wonder if even they know which way they're going. It does feel like there's this internal tug of war happening at all times there where they'll show up and say one thing. Phil Spencer will, 4 games are coming, don't worry, and then 6 months later we're talking about everything. So it's weird to try to decipher what's happening there. And I think we need to see what their next generation hardware looks like just to even make sure that they're serious about hardware in the first place. So
It seems like we know what happened. It came from the top.
yeah,
I
it did.
still I'm sure stories will eventually come out. I'm saying here, it sounds like Team Xbox did not want to do this. They wanted the backing to buy all these studios and stay in the more traditional console business. We know that for a fact, even from all the FTC stuff, the Bethesda stuff, them canceling PS5 versions. They were very much still the conservative console mindset of like, this is how the console business operates. And there was that call above to change course.
Yep.
That's what it seems like.
Yep.
I would love to like have some like when Phil leaves or something and he starts talking like Shuhei's doing right now.
Hey, Phil,
Dude,
you
I
come on
love
the
that.
podcast when you get out of there.
Oh, come on the
Tell us everything.
PlayStation podcast.
He loves Destiny. All right, that's PlayStation property. He's on there every night playing.
Well, like that's the thing, right? Like when he leaves, I sincerely hope he is an open book like Sean and Shuhei are, and we get all these stories about like what how they really felt about certain things at the time, because I'm sure there's a lot of stories to be told.
Yeah. Oh, there's got to be for how long he's been there and all the stuff he's seen. Yeah. All the meetings he's been in. I'm sure there's some really crazy stuff he could maybe like even sort of talk about. I did like even Shuhei's kind of like, I'm not talking about that, or he's
Yeah.
be very careful. I'm sure there's a lot that Phil would have to be careful about, but I'm sure there's some really interesting like bits of knowledge in there we could throw around. Some little
Hmm.
fun nuggets of the timeline for Xbox One, especially, and what he observed there.
Good God. You want to go back to where was I here? We had the Insomniac stuff, right? So I did include this little one right here. The Helldivers 2 creative director also taking a sabbatical.
Huh.
So a lot of exits here. Not even an exit. He says he's coming back, but Johan Pielstad, the creative director on Helldivers 2, announced he's going on a sabbatical for a bit.
Hmm.
That was after 11 years working at the studio, working on the first Helldivers on PS3 for Vita and the Steam version, now doing Helldivers 2. So he said he wants to take time off and redeem what was lost. He kind of got personal here, talking about how he had to set aside his family, friends, and himself. So I always find these noteworthy because it's, the sacrifice some of these guys make to ship these games. And so I read this and I'm like, oh, a sabbatical. Oh, so you're not coming back. Every time these guys take a sabbatical, they don't come back.
Oh well.
He said he wants to come back when Arrowhead does their next game.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Which who knows if that would be like maybe in the next like 1 or 2 years. I mean, Arrowhead, we should always be watching because they've got a relationship with Sony that has so far seen them publish these two games for what is an 11-year period. So
I'm
we have,
surprised Sony hasn't made the move to buy them.
it's probably no reason to. I mean, they've got a successful game that, the IP belongs to Sony. It's
That's
live,
true.
it's live service, so they have to keep working on it. Like there's just really no pressure, I think. And I would assume Arrowhead probably does not want to get bought anyway.
Yeah, that's probably true.
We've got a rumor here about the next God of War possibly being set in Egyptian mythology. This comes from a new post on Daniel Rickman's Patreon, or Daniel RPK, as some people know him. They're a known leaker in the movie entertainment space, primarily Marvel stuff, and they do mention that Sony is currently casting for Middle Eastern actors for an unknown AAA title, which Daniel says the project is likely the next God of War that explores Egyptian mythology. Do you know the track record for this account? Because every time they pop up, everyone always says like, oh, they're not really that reliable, even for like the movie stuff that they do. Like I don't follow them, so I don't know if it's like
To my
genuine.
understanding, their movie stuff is better than their games stuff. And this is kind
Mhm.
of a crossover because they would find out information around casting for movies, but this is casting for a game.
Yep.
And because of the location, the casting call, and like what they're looking for, they are theorizing that it is linked to God of War in Egypt.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. Even regardless of the source, Santa Monica has said before they've explored Egyptian mythology. I believe that was at the time when they made the conscious decision to do Norse. They chose Norse instead of Egyptian,
Right.
which I think the language back then was like, we looked at it, but maybe the environments would have felt very samey. And maybe the team just decided like, oh, there's a lot more to do in Norse. But they've done that. And so now where does the franchise go from here? I wouldn't be surprised if it was like if Egyptian was next. You would think maybe the studio's in a place where like the next God of War is probably very far away, but they've probably decided where it's going. That's
Yeah. Oh yeah.
may-
Yeah.
that's probably what I'm leaning towards.
Yeah, so I mean, it would make sense because they, like you said, they went to Norse, they did Greek before that, so you would go to Egyptian, and I'm curious the gameplay change though, because that's something that they've kind of mentioned. It's like, yeah, we changed things up when he shifted realms, basically. Like there's still like that gap between how he did that, and people's talk about the comics apparently explaining it, and there's been theories around this, but the idea is when he shifted then to the different mythology that they kind of changed up the gameplay and the view more over the shoulder and stuff, which was different from the more zoomed out look, more action, faster oriented stuff that we had in the original trilogy and stuff. I'm curious what the change would be then, because I'm not really sure which way you go. I don't think you can go back to You have to come up with something brand new. I don't know what other perspective you. Yeah, you're not gonna do first person, I assume.
That'd be strange. Well, I say strange. Maybe it wouldn't be. I wouldn't think they would change the gameplay. I would think they just stick to over the shoulder.
Hmm.
Maybe just
I don't know. I feel like it's too samey then, wouldn't it?
yeah, I mean, yeah. I guess it would. My line of thinking is, I don't know. How long do you want to take for this thing to come out? You know, you want
Yeah,
to, I guess,
that's true.
stick with certain principles because now we're talking about a game that doesn't have the sort of the assets that were built from 2018 to Ragnarok. So building a whole new environment, whole new world. I mean, it's a pretty big reset for the game. So I would have thought that the perspective would not change all that much.
It's PS6 game, obviously. So
Probably far away. Probably very far
yeah,
away.
a couple years in the PS6 generation.
Or it is a PS6 game that they show off as a PS6 game, and then oh, look at that! It's got a PS5 version.
Oh, the Gran Turismo setup. It's happening.
Yeah.
Oh, things definitely cross gen. Oh, easily.
It'll be fascinating to see how they do that because the thing is, like, if they show a bunch of PS6 games, I'm sure the discourse is going to be like, "Why isn't this on PS5? There's no reason for it to not be on PS5."
You
But
think
then
it's gonna be like that? You think it's
but
gonna be back and forth there, huh?
dude, I'm surely there will be people in that camp, and then there will be others in the camp of like the very old,
Mm.
like the oldie mindset of like we need PS6 only games. But like, dude, if 4 to 5 was like that with diminishing returns, how could it not be like that from 5 to 6?
Do you know what threw me off about the transition from PS4 to PS5 was the question around why you can't use the PS4 controller or the PS5. And maybe that's just because I was like, you're that old school mentality of new system, new controller, new everything.
Mhm.
That always threw me off as to why that was an expectation because it did always, to me, the old controller stayed with the old system. That's how I know with the PS1 and the PS2 and stuff, you could interchange some of those controllers at times. But for me, that was something I always considered as like the PS1 controllers, PS1, PS2 is PS2, PS3, PS3. I don't know. I never thought like I should be able to use this DualShock 4 on the PS5.
That was like, man, that was a weird time, like 2019, 2020 before they came out. Because you had a lot of that like stuff pop up, right? The one I always think about a lot, and it's so silly looking back at it, but like, and it feeds into console war bullshit. But it was like, oh, PS5 you can't expand storage. It's like, well, you can, just not at launch. And it's like, oh, look at how easy it is on Series X. It's like a little memory card. It's so cool. And it's like, well, yeah, but that's like really expensive price per gigabyte. Like, how do you not like eventually they'll unlock the feature? And that was like a whole silly thing, right? Like,
Mhm.
I think about that a lot. I think about the game upgrade thing versus smart delivery, which were like very similar, but they just had their own differences. Because the Xbox controller thing was the same deal. It's like you could use an X1 controller on Series X,
Right.
and that's where it stemmed from. But like
Yep.
everyone on the other side was like, but every new console, it's a new controller. So why
But
would you
it's
think
really funny, Ryan. The
uh,
next generation Xbox apparently is getting this Sebel controller, and it's gonna have all the kind of stuff that Sony had in their DualSense right now, like the different rumble and
yeah,
other things to it. So that would then, I guess, be a breakaway. You wouldn't be able to use the old control. When you start trying to generalize the control scheme and like you can use all these different controllers, but then the developer has to account for them or can't. I always like the idea of new hardware, new controller developed specifically for it.
yes, I would
Yeah.
agree.
Okay.
I'd be inclined to agree. I guess it's just it rubs people the wrong way consumer wise of like, all this stuff I had before. Why can't I use it for the next one?
It's kind of like that the exclusive talk going around too. Have you noticed this?
What for? Well, are you like implying like the whole Switch thing that's going on right now? I'm
No,
seeing
no.
like, I was
The
seeing commentary about how Switch 2 carts might not be, you can't put them in a Switch 1 and like Switch 2 games won't work on Switch 1. And I'm like, oh, what is going on with people?
Well,
What
yeah. I mean, just in general with exclusives, I've noticed that there is like the almost a push to get rid of them.
to get rid of exclusivity?
Yes, to get rid of
Mm.
exclusives. Yes. Have you noticed this?
from like in general or like or
Just in
cross-gen
general. I see the
exclusives?
conversation. I see the conversation online around just exclusives in general going away.
Well, that's the weird thing, right? Is I mean, if it's the console market, that's always the driving force to buy a box. And Sony is still, for the most part, that's how they do it. And that's how they've
Right,
always
right.
I mean, that's how they always did it. All three of them, whatever sort of player we're talking about here, either former like Sega or existing like Nintendo and Sony, they always did it. Um, but when you have one guy basically giving up, I say giving up, they're still making money. That's the whole point that's why they're in the business, but it's like a perception thing. Third parties are
Mhm.
like struggling obviously because they can't they're underperforming with so many games now because there's just like a saturation in the market. It's so hard to get your game out there. So there's more upside to shipping on as many platforms as possible. But timed exclusivity was always something where the platform holder should be paying enough to offset the loss of not shipping on the other guy's game or the other
Right.
platform.
Talking about like
It,
Square Enix.
yeah, well, it's just like I guess context is everything. Like what publisher,
Yeah.
what game, what platform. I guess it just depends on the circumstance.
I don't know, just maybe I've wondered if the newer generation that's been coming in is just looking at exclusives like, what is this? Like, what are we doing here? What? Like for us, it was always we were coming up and we had that weird, unique hardware that I mentioned, like your
Yeah.
cells, like your emotion engines, like Flipper, GameCube, and the Xbox being an off the shelf combination of like Celerons and Pentiums and stuff thrown all together. And they were always so different. And now a lot of these things are becoming very similar to
Yeah,
where
but
I understand the idea of it. You don't really, you kind of know what these systems can run. Whereas back in the day, you'd be surprised sometimes what a PS2 could run if the developers got a hold of it.
yeah, but would you argue that that was, like, such a well-known thing at the time? With, like, oh, let's say PS3 and under, because that's when, like, hardware was a lot more bespoke and
Right.
obtuse. Like, was that really that well known? I mean, like, Sony spent a lot of time talking about Cell on PS3 or the
Mhm.
Emotion Engine on PS2, but arguably that was a very similar thing in that, if it was a third party and they were not locked up in some way, they were shipping their games everywhere. That was a time where, like, God forbid if you were a third party, you were shipping the game on not just three platforms. We're talking PS2, GameCube, Xbox, DS, PSP, Game Boy Advance. Like Jesus Christ, what the
Yeah.
hell are we doing here?
Put on everything.
Yeah, like so. I don't know. I don't know if like the what's powering these machines is really as important as
Mm,
just the sort of identity of like if you want to play this game, gotta buy a PlayStation. And I mean, this is nowadays a lot more particular to Nintendo because like first party is just such a big part of their bottom line.
it is.
And they're super I mean, they're the most conservative. You ain't playing our shit anywhere except our
Nope.
box.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're very traditional.
Yeah. I mean, I'm and this gets into more Nintendo shit, but I'm very curious to see like what their lineup of games are going to be for Switch 2. Are they going to do a very similar cross-gen thing that we saw with Sony? Are they going to bar certain games that conceivably don't really have to be barred from the first Switch,
That's a good question.
right?
Yeah, they don't have the out of, well, it's a Wii, you can't play the Wii U disc on this thing. Now it's like, hey, they're all
There's no out.
cartridges, right?
There's
Yeah.
no out, and Nintendo has never been a platform that is like, "This is the power box where you get the most
Right,
beautiful"
right.
it's never been that. That's never been their MO. So they arguably have very few excuses to I mean, I know a lot of Nintendo people would probably come out the woodwork saying, "Switch is way too goddamn old. We need to leave Switch behind." But, like, I'm sure you'd have just as many folks argue, "There's no reason why this new Nintendo first party game can't be on the first one." So, like, what is the expectation there?
Hmm. Yeah, I see a lot of people who exclusives are being viewed in a it's being more demonized now. I've noticed online. People are very annoyed at exclusives at times, and it's interesting to me just because it's so different from what I remember it was like coming up even 10 years ago or so with this kind of stuff. So it's interesting. Just something I noticed online.
It's fair. I think it's a valid complaint. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not fun if it goes like a game goes somewhere that you can't play. Maybe that's the problem with like I don't want to say problem, but the younger generation coming in and like a lot of stuff being accessible to them, but then a handful of things aren't. Whereas when we grew up, it was kind of all over the place. Like there were so many things that you could only play here, so many things you could only play there. Maybe that's where it's a little bit different.
We also weren't fully connected at all times either. And it was like you went into the store and discovered stuff for the first time there and made like a rash decision that you'd regret later on a game.
Well, then like your sort of basis for what it was like was just like who you went to school with.
It was
Who
the dark ages back then. Yes.
When
We
yeah.
didn't communicate well with people. Like it was, well, I should say that because we were in person communicating, but like you didn't just jump on your phone and type something out to Twitter.
No,
And then an hour later be like, I shouldn't have made that tweet.
You weren't terminally online looking at a Reddit thread and seeing like 200 upvotes from one guy that gives you like some anecdotal data of like, oh, this is what people really feel about this topic.
Exactly. Yeah. Like now it's kind of viewed as the internet and what you see on social media is what everyone must think. It's like that's not really the case. Usually you see all the online, especially for games, because sometimes people will I'll ask you this. All right. Cause we get hard numbers from Nintendo on a lot of their games. Did you really see a lot of people talk about Mario Party Jamboree?
What did that sell? Do we have a number on that?
Okay. So we do, but like in your mind, are you like, man, that was all over the timeline. People were talking about Mario Party Jamboree constantly. I didn't really see that. But then if you look at the sales number, and in 2.5 months, it sold 6.17 million copies.
Wow, 6 million. I know the report just came out. I didn't look at the game updates.
2.5 months, and you're like, what? Who bought all this? What? So
that's a lot of people that wanted to play a Mario Party game and they had their fun, and they didn't tell people how much fun they had.
Yeah, it's smart.
God forbid you enjoy a video game.
You having fun online, it's over.
Stop having fun.
Then knock him down a peg on this one.
Oh man, good offshoot, good conversation. You want to move on to this? This I thought was noteworthy. Sumo Digital is canceling their new IP to focus on production partners. So the Sumo Group was in the process of developing their own IP, but recently, due to industry changes, as they say, and long-term stability for their business, they're now going to focus on development services for partners. Sumo has had a relationship with Sony for a bit. They recently did Sackboy: A Big Adventure. They've done some other projects as well. And they were on the XDev leak from, I think that was 3 years ago now at this point, the XDev leak list. So there was a handful of XDev projects on there, which almost all of them either came out or like a handful were canceled because the Twisted Metal game was on there. But Sumo was listed on that XDev leak for Sackboy, which came out, and then also Project Carbon, which I'm not sure if Carbon is still a thing. It was listed as an open world game, so maybe this game's still coming. Something to just bear in mind, I guess. A reminder to folks that Sumo did have another project in the works at SIE, so with XDev in particular. So we do have that. We also have this, a Bloodborne DMCA takedown, a handful of takedowns. My boy Lance McDonald, he's the guy that made the Bloodborne 60 FPS patch, which he put out a while ago. That's been like 2 years ago now that he put that out. It's been a little bit. He recently got a DMCA takedown notice for that, which he clarified why. He said it was not specifically about the patch because the language surrounding the DMCA is that he called it the Bloodborne patch. So using the name, he took it down, which if people remember this, it was a whole thing with the Bloodborne carding and the Bloodborne demake that Lilith Walther made. She too got the DMCA takedown, right? So they had to take it down as well. So what's going on, John? What's going on?
This Bloodborne thing, it never goes away. I'm telling you. And now people are wondering, wait a minute, are they doing these DMCA strikes all over the place? Where you mentioned the demake and the Bloodborne patch for 60 FPS, because when you go to search Bloodborne 60 FPS, you want to find the remake that they're doing rather than the patch.
One would think.
Thing is never. Well, it's a good thing they didn't. It's a good thing they had Blue Point locked and loaded for this, and they didn't have them do some multiplayer God of War thing instead. So now the state of play comes up. Blue Point, Bloodborne. We're good to go. No, wait.
I've always thought like at a certain point they have to do something. And if they don't, like I would think that they would get aggressive and stop like because the game is like getting emulated. Isn't it like fully playable now or something?
It is. It is. Yeah, it is.
Like
A lot of progress has been made in just 8 months or something.
how are they not stopping that? You would think that they wouldn't really want people to do that. What do I know?
It's they have to be doing something Bloodborne. I'm sorry. They've so much stuff has happened around Bloodborne for years now. Like they won't let us forget about it. If we try to forget about it, they remind us. It keeps happening. And you can't put it at the end of the 30th anniversary thing with persistence and then show a pretty good looking shot of Bloodborne, by the way. It wasn't like kind of blurry or like, oh, look, there's aliens. So that looked pretty clean, okay? Look clean.
Your argument is like it was a clear clip of gameplay.
Clean, okay?
It wasn't out of focus or anything. It showed Bloodborne.
It's there's too many coincidences around this thing. Like, come on. It's one thing to keep stringing people along, but like you got to deliver at some point. Something.
You would think. I don't know, John. I don't know. Do you know?
Even just a patch, a 60 FPS patch.
People
always tell me it's not happening. People always tell me it's not a thing.
We've been over this. You're not getting a patch because that's free.
Yeah, I know.
Why would you? On what planet do you think you're getting a patch for free?
Oh, they're charging 70 for this thing. Let's be real.
And it's the one game they're getting away with it. It's the one game.
Oh, absolutely. People are going to line up in droves for that. 70 is easy. Yeah, here you go.
I will say, I think people would be pretty pissed if they didn't do like the $10 upgrade. If you have like a PS4 copy, I think they'd be pretty bummed about that.
I guess. But then they'd get over it and buy it.
No, they would. They would.
Yeah.
I would think they would do the $10 upgrade if we're talking about
I'd like
the
to think
PS5
so.
version. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I like to think so. But I mean, there are a lot of people, I bet you, who'd go out and buy the boxed copy for full price just to have it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because
I would.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would too. I'd be like, I'm getting this thing physically immediately.
100%. I mean, there's only a few things that keep me up at night. And one of them is that I can't have a plastic blue box, but the label is white. There's in Bloodborne, I don't have that, John.
That's
a blue case, but it's a white label that says PlayStation 5. These are the problems that our society has to face in these trying times. Let's talk about Phantom Blade Zero. Did you see that new trailer?
Yeah, the gameplay where they did the boss fight and
looks good.
It looks really good. Like they show it and I'm like, really? It looks
questionably good.
It looks questionably good. Yeah, it looks like AAA kind of choreography, and like the boss looks very creative where it turns into like a marionette that you're fighting.
Yeah.
It looks a little too good, doesn't it? Like I keep watching this. I'm like, I don't know. They
but it's playable.
This is it.
It's playable. It was playable at China Joy, I think, right? China Joy and Gamescom.
Yeah, I'm not saying. I'm saying like, is that what the whole game's going to be? Like that kind of quality for the whole game?
I don't know. You would hope, because apparently after Black Myth Wukong's success, the game received more funding.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, it makes sense.
We're here. Yeah, I guess angel investors or VCs out of the woodwork were like, "Oh, we got to start investing in all these games coming out of China." We do have some details, I guess, from a bunch of Chinese outlets. Excuse me. It's going to offer 4 difficulty settings, so easy all the way to very hard. So it's not like a Souls game per se. Main story path is expected to be 20 to 30 hours with around 20 hours of side content. And there's also hidden bosses you can encounter, doing a separate mode that lets you fight previously defeated bosses. It's a little pitch for what the game's doing there. Isn't that like around the same time to beat Wukong? It's not like super long, right? Isn't Wukong like 20, 30? Oh, 40?
46, 47 hours beating Black Myth Wukong. Yeah.
Was that with side content?
There was some side content, yeah, but that wasn't like there was like a additional boss after completing the game and stuff. And it just depends on all the extra stuff you want to do, how much time you want to spend maybe leveling your character up to make them even stronger. And there's a lot of stuff you can do outside of just the main path. So if I could have spent more time on it, probably would have been in like 60, 70 hours pretty easily in that
Okay.
game.
Oh, that's it. Probably longer than this then. All I know is I hear 20 to 30 hours and I get very excited. Like, ooh,
Yes. Yeah. I'm fine with that.
yeah.
There's, it's the age old discussion around should you get 70 hours for $70. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if we need to do that every time, guys. I honestly, 20 to 30 hours, as you mentioned, if it's a good, fun, tight experience, I'm perfectly fine with that.
Well, hopefully we get a release date for this game because they did announce that they'll be announcing the release date this year, which is,
Announcement for the announcement. I like it.
yeah, we're getting a lot of those nowadays. You notice that lately?
Yeah, that's
We will make this announcement at some point. Okay, it's kind of how it
2026,
works.
I think, on that one. 2026.
I was hoping this year, but the way that they described that, and okay, so I don't
Yeah.
know. Seems like maybe it needs a little bit more time in the oven. We do have some updates for going back to the top of the show here, Final Fantasy VII Remake. So part 3. Speaking with Famitsu, the director, Naoki Hamaguchi, said development is going well. Progress is going as planned with no delays. Producer Yoshinori Kitase also confirmed that the game's story is fully complete, and they're very satisfied with the final part and how it'll shape up. And they think fans will really enjoy the final part. We have a separate thing where, speaking with 4Gamer, Yoshinori Kitase did confirm that the third entry will not be exclusive to PS6. So, as we all thought, probably going to see a lot of cross-gen stuff because even if this game does dip into PS6, you're very much going to have a PS5 version that is playable, which means do not play it on a base console. That's all I'll say there.
Well, let's say this comes out 2020. I'm thinking this is going to come out like 2027.
I think 7. Yeah.
I think it's going to do that thing where it comes out 6 months before the PS6 comes out or something like that.
Yeah, basically like 7 remake right before PlayStation, the next one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we get that holiday 27 release for the PS6, this will be like May or something like that, or April, and it's like, okay, well, I guess I'll play it here on the PS5 Pro and then play it again on the PS6.
Well, here's the thing, right? I'm thinking about this for like a lot of late life cycle PS5 games. If anything is coming out and let's say like early 27, I feel like assuming you're an early adopter and you like buying new hardware, you got to have that mindset of like, I'm not buying any of these games that are coming out. Because like all of this stuff's getting PS6 versions, right? Like, a lot of stuff coming out early 27, probably getting those PS6 ports.
You think we're dealing with a $10 upgrade then too? Like go PS6 version, like go from 70 to 80?
I would just like a MSRP price increase, or you can buy the PS6 version and get a $10 upgrade.
$10 upgrade, I'm thinking, like how they did with the PS4 to the PS5, how you would have to spend another $10 to move up, how they did with some of those games.
Well, you remember, like, actually a lot of those were free initially. Like a lot of them were free. Then
they started like charging 10.
Well, SIE titles went to $10. A lot of third parties still did like, no, it's free. Some did like $5, I think. So depends on the publisher.
But I'm thinking like Intergalactic, for example.
So like a first party game.
Yeah, like $10 jump.
I would think 10. Or if anything, that would be like it would be a generation MSRP increase, like a very small one where it's like, oh no, the upgrade's 15.
Yeah. That's gonna be interesting. What if here's the real question, Ryan? I'm curious about this. What happens if we increase the price of these games mid-gen? So by next year we have $80 games. Okay. Let's say we make that move. What's the PlayStation 6 game cost? Is that still 80 or is that 90?
It'd be awful if it was that much money.
I'm just wondering because we hear about people in the background being like, "Yo, man, I hope Grand Theft Auto 6 makes the move so we can too." It's like, okay, Ubisoft, yes, your game is worth Grand Theft Auto 6, sure.
You see
whatever you say.
You see Matt Piscatella, he did not like that that it was because it was like a very long PDF presentation that I forgot their name, but that analyst that did that, Matt Piscatella did not. He's like, yeah, okay, maybe, but like that's probably not going to happen. The price increase. He was very outwardly outspoken about that, saying that's unlikely to happen.
So what if they finessed the system a little bit and still got $100 for GTA 6? And what I mean by that is, What if the single player was sold separately from the multiplayer?
Now, see, I could see happening. I'm trying to remember now. It just came to me. The point Matt was making is that like a lot of publishers already do this with like the deluxe edition.
Oh yeah,
So
early
he's
access.
yeah, he's like games already have a pretty high MSRP just off those versions alone.
Yep.
But with that game, yeah, I mean, because it's probably going to be similar, right? Single player first, day one, then online comes later. But like you're saying, they'll charge for online.
I'm thinking like 70 for the single player because that'll probably be I assume a sizable experience,
Yeah.
right? Just to play through that, and then $30 for the multiplayer.
Oof. It'd probably get pushback, but at the same time, it probably wouldn't.
Yeah, and people will fall
Yeah.
over themselves handing them money. Yeah.
I
So I
I
mean, with
wonder.
how much money they made off shark cards and all this stuff, please, $30 drop in the bucket for the GTA community.
Do you remember when GTA Online came out and it was just like unplayable for like how long was it? It was like I think more than a week easily.
Yeah, I didn't even really get into GTA Online like that, but I remember that whole thing
Oh, you
happening
didn't?
because it was this new thing. It's like, oh, it's Grand Theft Online. This is crazy, and it, it was all
Dude,
busted up.
it's still ingrained in my mind, which was like the scene where you like get a car and one of the NPCs, I think it is Lamar, and he gets out of the car and he's like, "Here you go, player," and your character's just stuck there and like the top left or something like it just keeps saying player joined it's like I can barely remember it, but at the same time I was stuck on that screen like everybody was for like a long time. You just could not play GTA Online. It was you just couldn't do it.
So we're gonna make a whole like syndicate and everything, and new
I,
GTA Online.
I was thinking you and me could role play.
Mm, what in the in the game? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
in the game. It's like
GTA.
the
Yeah, RP man, come on, you got to get with the times here, John.
they're gonna build that in, I assume, to the online. That's such a big
Oh
deal where
yeah,
people, yeah, they're gonna build
probably
that in.
for
I thought you're
sure.
supposed to make your own crime empire and stuff. I thought we were gonna make a whole
No, we're supposed
something.
to build a sort of anime plot line.
Ah,
That's
okay,
what I'm
okay,
trying to do
okay.
at least.
Hmm. That's the big question. What's that online's gonna look like? Because I assume that's gonna be next level stuff. So that'd be cool.
Yeah, I'm sure
We'll
it'll be
see.
nuts. I'm sure it'll be nuts. We definitely don't have a lot of time to go over these, but we do have some things to discuss because we had recently uh, both Sean Layden and Shuhei do two very long interviews. They said a lot of things just
They
about
did.
their time at the company. We can't cover all of it. We'll cherry pick a few things. So for Sean Layden, which as a reminder, former SIEA CEO and chairman of Worldwide Studio, Sean Layden, before he left the company. The thing he talked about recently on Reese Riley's channel, that's Kiwi Talks, he was asked if Sony could get away with PS6 being digital only. And Sean said he thinks that they could not get away with it. So the reason is because they're so platform dominant in 170 countries. So there's an obligation for accessibility. And he gave more specific examples here where he talked about athletes bringing their consoles to hotels or using consoles on a military base. But, that's a very high ranking individual at Sony back in 2019, which is kind of far away, but also still recent enough. He's just saying, like, I don't think they could get away with it. So PS6
Okay.
probably having discs. My thought on this was always like, I think the console will have it. It's just more a matter of what does that look like? It will be a detachable drive again.
Right.
I mean, my thing, John, what I'm curious about, I feel like the obligation is making sure there's a drive there to accept all the 4 and 5 discs, but will they print PS6 games? Like,
That's a good question.
yeah, like, now I still think they probably will, but there's a part of me thinking, like, what if they don't? What if it's like, yeah, there's a drive, but that's just so like you can bring forward all your 4 and 5 stuff, and we're cutting it off at 6.
Do you think they'll design the console to have a disk drive, as in? So the PS5 now obviously has like that weird looking bulge on the side for the disk
Yeah,
drive,
yeah,
and it
it's like it
does kind
slopes
of look
down.
like it wasn't. I don't say afterthought, but they were like, man, the digital one looks so much better because it doesn't have that weird offset side panel to it.
Yeah.
I wonder if the PS6 will just be designed with the digital one as the lead SKU, and that's it. And then in order to play your PS4 and PS5 discs, you have to buy a detachable drive that is legitimately just one of those little drives you buy at Walmart with the cable that comes around, and that's how it works.
I 100% recently made this point as like, what if that's what it looks like? It's like, yeah, we support it, but it looks like the HD DVD add-on for 360.
Yeah,
This like
that's what I'm thinking.
This separate little box, like that's in my head, that's the worst case scenario because I think it's going to play discs. Just what does that look like? And it would be definitely a bummer if it's like not integrated into the design of it. And it would be more disappointing if like you can't go to retail and like get a 6 game printed on a disc. So that's where my concern is. I think it'll play them, but what does that look like?
I mean, the file sizes they keep getting larger and larger, but they don't fit on the discs anyway.
Well, yeah, I think it's like, okay, they support it. And let's say Sony says, yeah, you can print PS6 games. At that point, it's also a publisher thing. So many publishers don't even want to do it now, or they don't print the whole thing on the disc.
Yeah.
Like there's very few companies that are like, oh, we'll do 2 discs. Very few.
Yeah.
Like it's possible. Nobody's doing it. Nobody wants to do it.
I mean, all you're doing is cutting into your margins, not only for putting another Blu-ray disc together for that, but also the case itself might have an extra little door in there, and like people don't think about it, but even that little bit of plastic. Do you remember when the 360 and the PS3? Well, I remember the 360 and the Wii specifically because I'd always open it up and see it. But halfway through the generation, they just started cutting out triangles inside the cases. Do you remember this? So
Triangles?
It was if you opened up the case, it was just missing chunks of plastic. Do you remember this? I'm sure I have a case over here that has that.
I'd have to check my 2 disc games. I think I only have like one.
No, not even that. Not even like 2 discs, but just any cases. Like halfway through, and it was kind of like I think the pitch was, oh, it's for recycling purposes. We're using less material to be environment friendly. And then it made the case
on what
less
system?
stable.
On what system?
360 and Wii are 2 that I specifically remember.
I was gonna say because the 3 cases I think never changed outside of just like the labeling that was embossed on it.
Yeah, I'm thinking of 360 and Wii. They started just removing plastic from the case, and you could tell because the cases were really like it was so easy to just crunch them because they were missing plastic.
I'd have to check.
I'm sure there's.
I'm sure I've got some.
Yeah. Just go through, open them, and once you come across one, you'll be like, okay, I know what they're talking about here. But it was such a weird thing to notice halfway through the generation, and it was pitched as we're doing good for the environment, but really it was like we're saving so much plastic out of each case that it's just saving us money. Like that's what it really was, you know. So it's little things like that. Or a better example is when you buy a jar of peanut butter, right? And then you turn it over and the little center part is pushed way inside of it. And you're like, okay, hold on a minute. Like how much are you saving yourself because you're there's less material in here, less product technically. It's stuff like that.
Okay, here's the thing, right? Like good, do that. If that means I can still get discs and like you're going to print the whole thing on there, like let's be honest. Look at all this shit behind me. You know how much extra plastic is in those? Look at Switch. Why are Switch games this big? Why?
Would it be weird if the next generation were larger cases?
It'd be the most puzzling thing on the even Vita cases.
That's gonna be funny.
Vita cases, which are like these little baby things, you still open it and it's the size of Texas for the cart. Like why make them smaller?
They did it with PS2 cases too, the cutout plastic.
PS2 cases were pretty much the same the whole way through. They made one redesign, which was taking out the memory card holder.
I remember that.
Yeah. They did that. They don't have to be that big though. Every game case is like way too big. Way too big. So they can make them smaller for sure.
I need to see what I had to figure out which games had like what year that was when they started removing them.
Yeah, you're really
plastics.
You're really on the fire on the ball.
People in the comments, I'm sure remember this or have games right now they can look at that has this effect.
I believe you. It's just for PlayStation. I know for a fact like this did not happen. 3, 4, 5, 2 cases. They never like removed that much plastic. They made changes to them, but not like full blown triangles cut out of them. But I just don't look at other physical platforms that often, so I must not have noticed this. I always remember Switch cases feeling very, or not Switch, Wii cases feeling very empty. Like if you held them the wrong way, you'd push the game art into the missing impressions.
Okay, I think they called it. Okay, this looks like. Well, I found an image of one because people are selling them on eBay. It looks like.
Are they genuine cases? Like OEM cases?
Xbox 360 Eco Box.
Eco Box.
Or Eco cases, I guess. That's what they called them. And people didn't like them very much. But that's what they called them. Yeah, game company. Okay, I found an article from IGN. Thank you. Game companies going green with new cases. New EcoBox design offers 31% reduction in CO2 production emissions. Here, I'll drop this.
And Sony just didn't.
There you go. There's a picture right at the top of it.
Oh yeah, these ones. Okay.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. That.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen them before. It's so funny that it's like Sony was like, nah. Nah, we're not.
Now Nintendo, yeah, it's right here. Nintendo is also doing EcoBox for Wii titles, and they're also currently in talks with Sony about its PlayStation 3 cases as well.
Oh yeah,
that never worked out.
Yeah, this is 2012, so this was like really late life cycle.
Yeah, I guess that didn't work out then for the. Well, no, this was posted in 2009. It was updated in 2012, and I guess that was them getting the comment.
Oh, excuse me.
For
yes,
that, right. for the PlayStation 3 one, maybe.
You're right. Yep.
That's funny.
Yeah, Sony said no.
Yeah.
Their cases are still.
They even mentioned lighter shipping costs. That's what we're down to for this. That's what I mean. The margins are affected so much by just the logistics of shipping these games out and getting them to stores.
Well, that would have been
like that will affect it.
That would have been that's where my line of thinking was weight when you're shipping them.
It's amazing all the stuff that goes into that. But I mean, that was back with the 360 and PS3 and Wii when we were still very much so dependent on physical media over anything else, especially in like 2009.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, now obviously now you're not shipping as many, but you're also not selling as many. Before they probably get marked down anyway. So it's tough to predict this stuff now.
Well, the good news is we'll probably still have discs. I think so.
That's good.
At least for one more cycle. Microsoft, not so much.
Oh no, Microsoft I think is out. They're ready to be out because they're not even selling. I think Avowed's not even physical. I think that's just digital only.
Yeah. Hopefully PS6 games get printed. If they do, I'm curious what the box would look like. Maybe just a different color. What do we have? We had that. Then Shuhei did an interview with Ben Hansen over at MinMax. That was like 2 hours long. The two things out of that struck me was he was asked about like what's one big moment from the competition that like made you go, oh shit, like like I'm afraid or something. And at first he's like, oh, I can't really think of one. Then he's like, oh, wait a minute, 360 coming out a year early, that was pretty scary. And then he's like, oh man, wait a minute, the 3DS. And he's like, not the hardware. He's like, it was the same price as the Vita, but then they dropped the price $100 and they announced Monster Hunter was exclusive. He's like, oh man, that was a big scary moment. And I'm like, yep, it sure as shit was, because you did not want to lose Monster Hunter on your portable. Mm-hmm. And that effectively, I don't want to say that single-handedly killed Vita, because obviously there's many problems that went into it, but that did not help. Not help at all.
That was a big thing for the PSP for its generation, was having Monster Hunter.
Dude, that game sold so many PSPs. It was insane. It was like in the top 10 with Famitsu sales every week for like, it was something crazy. It was like 60 weeks straight or something like that. Maybe I can't remember exactly, but it was nuts. So yeah, Shuhei's like, oh, that was terrible. That was not something.
That was a cutthroat moment by Nintendo.
Super cutthroat, but that's part of it, right?
Yeah,
that's part of the business. He specifically said like, oh, dropping 100 and they got the most important game. That's a done deal.
I think it's how you know Nintendo was like. I mean, obviously they were built on their handheld, right? And the 3DS coming out at a time it did, with the Wii having lost just about all of its momentum, and then the Wii U was coming up, and we saw how that worked out for them. it maybe in their mind they were like, this is it. We got to make this happen. We gotta figure this out. Cut it $100. Go get the big exclusive that Sony's been riding on, and we're attaching that to our system.
You
As a
ever
business, this Nintendo very aggressive.
did you ever read Reggie Fils-Aime's book?
No,
It's
I did not.
in the game, Heart of the Game. Forget what it's called exactly. I did read it, but he talked about that moment, that 3DS
That
moment.
moment. Oh
Yeah.
wow. Okay. Okay.
Gave some insight into that. I don't think he mentioned Monster Hunter, but yeah, it was a big like we got to drop the price sort of thing. It was a big thing at the time.
Yeah, it can't be the same price as the Vita.
Well, he can't be that expensive, period, when you're not selling any of them. So
Yeah.
so there was that. The other one, which I love, dude. Anything PS3, I love hearing this stuff. So the other question he got was like, was there any sort of fork in the road where you're like, oh, I'm so glad we didn't go down that road? That was the question. And Shuhei's sitting there, he's like, he's like, oh, PS3, but like he answered it the other way. He's like, that's the road we went down that we didn't want to go down. He's like, that we picked the wrong one there. He's like, oh yeah, PS3 was tough. And obviously he just explained why, it's hard to, it was expensive, hard to make games on it and everything. But it's funny that the question was the fork in the road, which, what was the big moment where you're happy you didn't go down that? And his only answer was, oh no, we went down this one. We did not like it. And it was
What was the
PS3.
alternative?
Well, he didn't present an alternative.
I didn't mean like, yo, what was the other system you guys had in mind? What was the other one that was up on the whiteboard that you guys left there?
I don't think there was, because I mean, Ken was the kind of dude where it was his final say on like everything. So he wanted to make a very bespoke box that they just made it, and then the software teams got it after. They never asked the software guys like, what do you want this thing to be? They started doing that with PS4, but that I thought was funny.
The idea was the 2-cell processors, right?
Well, yeah, that was like on the roadmap, but like whether it's 1 or 2 cells, I don't think either of those options were necessarily good. But I love hearing PS3 stuff. Anytime I hear about how disastrous it was behind the scenes, like, man, if I want to be a fly on the wall and just hear people lose their minds. Let's move on to some PlayStation production news real quick. A lot of things going on with the movie and TV scene here. Apparently, Sony's helping with this Resident Evil movie, which
they're rebooting it.
Yeah, so that's being directed by Zach Krieger, and 4 studios are in a bidding war, which includes Warner Brothers and Netflix. But PS Productions is helping produce the film, which that's the first like non-PlayStation IP they're doing. So I thought, well, that's interesting. I'm sure they want to like always be there as a mediator for like any video game adaptation, but in this case, this is the first one where it's not like their IP.
I just fell out of the Resident Evil movies. I know there was a run of them every like 3 years. It seemed like a new one was coming out, but the reboot is a good idea. It's a good idea. For just people in general who have seen the run of Resident Evil movies, it'd be weird to be like, yeah, we're making a sequel to like the 6th movie in that series. So it's like, no, reboot makes sense.
I've heard that people like them, but I don't know. At the same time, it seems like most video game adaptations aren't good, but I've heard people like these. So maybe this one will be even better. I don't know.
Yeah, keep an eye on it. Seems like we're a ways off. So
yeah, that one's probably a little bit far behind. We did get an update on The Last of Us Season 2. So Craig Mazin, Neil Druckmann, they were speaking with Entertainment Weekly about Season 2. The only things that really came out of this was them talking about Caitlin Dever's rendition of Abby, how she didn't bulk up for the show, which I guess the reason for that is that there's not as much moment-to-moment like violent action. So they're saying like there's still violence in there, but it's more about the drama. So maybe that's something to bear in mind.
The person who plays Ellie is already pretty small, so
she's small. Caitlin's pretty small too. I think people
probably make her look in comparison to the actress there. Camera tricks, you could probably still make her look a lot bigger than.
I mean that's the thing though, right? Like a lot of guys do this for movies. They'll like bulk up and get ripped, and so like Caitlin just it's like, nah, son, I ain't doing that. I don't know what the reason was, because this is their explanation. I don't know. Not as much violent action, moment to moment, more drama, which I guess makes sense. They're going to be still a bit more grounded versus the
Bella Ramsey. That was her name.
Oh,
That was the
you
person's
couldn't
name.
remember her name?
I just want to make sure I had the name correct before I just said a name for
It was
Bella
it
Ramsey.
was Bella Ramsey.
In this case, yes, they having that person next to Abby, Caitlin.
Caitlin Dever.
Thank you. Make sure I said that right too. You have the scale there, and I almost feel like if she did bulk up, it would actually it would look kind of off then almost in
I
this
think
case,
so.
just because of the casting. So they could have done it and made her look super imposing, I guess. But I guess it's just not really necessary for the way they're portraying these two characters.
Probably. I mean, the thing is too, like there's not the big time jump that the game saw. It's like Bella still looks like she did in season 1. She doesn't look that
Yeah.
different. So
I don't know. The casting has definitely been like a point of conversation.
yeah, I mean
So,
they're clearly taking liberties, which they already. I mean, in this like article, they're saying like, yeah, we definitely played with the timeline a bit. So the other big thing out of this article is that Mason confirmed that it's likely that the story will extend past season 3. So before they said like, and they're not going to go past the second game. We knew the second game would be at least 2 seasons. Now they're saying likely past season 3, which means if they're not going past the games, that means the second game is going to be 3 seasons, which
wow.
I'm sure fans, and I'm kind of in the same line of thinking, know like where the break points would be. Hearing that there might be another season, that would mean that, you know, it'd be the sort of end arc of part 2, if you know what I'm getting at. I don't want to say it because just for spoilers, but there's like a final act of part 3, and which isn't super long, but now if I am reading this correctly, it sounds like that might be that 4th season.
I mean, they also can do a lot with flashbacks and stuff being an entire episode for some of these characters, you know? So
Yeah.
I assume they're going to do a lot of that too, just to kind of lay the groundwork for these characters for the big climax for, I guess at this point, season 2 and 3, and who knows, they stretched even further than that.
And 4, yeah.
Yeah, season 4. So I'm trying to figure out what the big season finale cliffhanger would be for because I'm already, you get so many hours into Last of Us Part 2 and immediately like, well, this part, maybe that gets moved more to the back end and they're like, nah, that'll be one of the big shocks towards the end of the
I believe that
seasons, you know?
that thing you're referring to does happen early.
Oh, okay.
Is my understanding. But the
Okay.
break points I'm thinking of are, you know, the 3-day thing between the two characters, then they meet up. That's where the season would end. Then the other break point would be that sort of final act where one character kind of goes off to another area, let's say. I'm trying not to. I don't want to spoil it. But I don't. But it's if you've played the game, you have that context. I think you know what that's what I think they're getting at. Because at first I read this, I'm like, oh, I thought you said you're not going past the second game, but they're really stretching this bad boy out if that's the case. If they're doing 3 seasons for the second game. That's all I've got though. It was a pretty busy week. There was a lot going on.
We did have a few questions as well that came in from the Patreon Spawncast Network.
Excellent.
Couple here. I can go over some of these real quick. Let me see. Okay, here we go. This is from Kale, who says, if you were in Sony's shoes, would you go ahead and put more first-party games on Switch 2? If so, what game would follow MLB and Lego Horizon?
Probably a Sackboy game.
Sackboy would make sense.
Do Sackboy Big Adventure.
Yeah, that was not a bad idea.
Yeah, if that follows the sort of method. I mean, MLB, excuse me, Jesus Christ, almost died there. MLB, they didn't want to do because it's the association kind of made them do it.
Yeah. Sackboy's not a bad idea.
Maybe the tune's different nowadays. I would assume Sackboy probably.
Zach asks, where is Metal Gear Solid Delta? Reviewers played about an hour of the game more than 6 months ago and still not even a release date. Do you think Konami is watching the other large releases like Black Ops 6, Assassin's Creed Shadows, or GTA 6 and waiting for the right window? That's the only answer that Zach could think of here.
I would agree.
I think everyone's looking at GTA 6 like, okay, when's that coming out?
Yeah.
I also think Konami is being pretty smart in the way of let's just use Xbox and PlayStation for marketing. So whenever they're ready, we'll be there and they can show off our game for us and maybe even pay us some money.
Yeah.
So I think Konami's they're actually doing their thing right now. I'll give them that. Joe McKenna says, what percentage of PS6 titles will run at 30 FPS? Oh,
of PS
launch titles.
of
Sorry,
PS6 titles?
launch titles. Yeah.
I would imagine none. Virtually, I mean, this generation hardly. I mean, the list of 30 FPS only games is actually pretty small.
There you
And
go.
in theory, like 6 has got to be primarily 60 FPS games like this cycle.
Yeah, they brought up frame rate actually a bit more than I thought they would when they talked about the PS5 Pro. So they seem very aware of that being a thing for gamers right now.
Yeah,
So
it's a much different environment nowadays, I would argue. It was not a marketable thing like 10 years ago. Now it is.
Brandon Wells says if Microsoft gave Sony a cut to put Game Pass on PlayStation, do you think they would do it? If they did, I think we would see the end of Microsoft producing Xbox consoles.
Uh, that implies that Game Pass is that directly tied to Xbox, but the Xbox hardware, which it kind of is because their numbers are stagnating because most of their subscribers are on Xbox hardware. So
Yep.
conceivably, they do need to get it somewhere else that would actually want the membership because their like whole pie in the sky dream is they want people to subscribe without a console, which just is not happening, right?
Yeah.
So I'm sure they would love to do it. I still, even with like some sort of negotiation, it's got to be like a no every time. Like Sony's not even humoring it. Like, no, it's not happening.
I think Sony's very, very cautious about Game Pass after observing what it's done to Microsoft's platform.
They've got their own service.
Yeah.
Like they definitely have done. They'll like allow EA or a Ubisoft service on there, but I don't know. I can't see Game Pass like not ever happening, but it would be such a tough sell.
This is Christian Hernandez. I wanted to give you a shout out, but I think we answered this question pretty well in depth early in the show. But still, this was from Christian. Says, what do you think of Herman Holst having someone above him and can no longer greenlight games on his own? Is this a good decision in your opinion?
Yeah, so we definitely spent a lot of time on that.
Yeah.
Um,
So
it's still I still find that it's maybe for the most part bigger. I'll add this like bigger decisions perhaps. Like, does he have to run everything through Hideaki? I don't know if that's entirely clear. He's still got the same role. It
mhm.
does appear to be a leash on him, but nobody knows exactly what that means in the grand scheme of things.
This one's from Medallion who says, how do you feel about the gaming industry or people who are let go from projects that have not done well, like Dragon Age the Veilguard, but get to move to other much anticipated projects? Failing upwards, quote unquote, is the term. We don't need to feel bad for some of these people who just get to move to potentially better prospects despite the setback of working on a project that not do as well. As long as everybody or friends share the same beliefs, nobody has to be without a gig for too long. Projects. I for Dragon. Oh, if people move from position to position, I guess it depends on what that new place would be looking for. So you're saying like Veilguard, which we know at this time EA said it themselves, missed expectations. I mean, there's a number of people that worked on that game, but not all of them say did writing for this like a certain scene or did the combat. Like some were product managers who were like, okay, I'm here to get this game out the door, let's get it out the door, and they got it out the door, and then they go, oh wow, they did their job, can you help us get this game out the door at X, Y, or Z company? Do you know what I mean? Like there's so many positions on a game that you could do really well, but the game still come out and not meet expectations, but you did the combat or the collision here or whatever correctly. It's almost like if you look at a football, for example, like Super Bowl's coming up, I'm thinking about this, guys. You could have someone who's really, really good at rushing the passer, but they're not out there throwing the ball as a quarterback, but they're really good on a terrible team. It's kind of like that. So some of them, yes, are going to find better jobs at other places because they may have done their position well, but it didn't result in a great game at the end of it. If that makes sense.
The only thing I would think of about this is like not everybody gets to do that. Then we have like, I mean, it's what 20,000, 30,000 something redundancies in the past 2.5 years, like that. All those people did not fail upwards, so to speak. It
No,
sucks.
no.
Yeah,
There's some that just
there's a lot
left
of people
gaming.
that there's a lot of people that just are out. They're just out of the business.
Yeah. Some don't even. There are a few that just don't. I've heard anyway. They don't even want to come back. They might leave and they're like, I'm just not coming back to gaming. That's it. I'm out.
Why would they? Yeah.
Yeah. And Zoop says, what do you think of David Zaslav seemingly firing David Haddad, supposedly so he can be replaced by someone who will blow money on a bunch of DOA live services the way Jim Ryan did? Seems ending Rocksteady was not enough.
What do you think of that, John?
I don't know. Thank you, Zoom.
He's just gonna leave it there.
WB is
poor
yeah,
Rocksteady.
I know. Well, if you put Rocksteady on another live service game, I mean, I don't know what you expect at this point.
there's some things can't be helped, I think.
Yeah, the live service carrot on a stick. Some of these companies, you just need to get over it and understand that not every company is going to have a Fortnite available to them. It's like one of those once in a multi-generational, almost once in a lifetime strokes of luck. That's just all it is. Like let's be real, Fortnite started out as Save the World. They moved to Battle Royale, and it was kind of right place, right time, and then Epic ran with it, and that was that. It's not something that most are ever going to reproduce if it ever happens again. So I would.
Sean Layden made a good point with that recent conversation he had. He just said, like, how many, like, if 20 games are successful, how much more room is there? Like, there's just not. Like, there's the games we have, and that's kind of it. Now you can't break in. Nobody can break in. You have to pull time away from those people. It's just not happening.
Nope. Those things are almost like they've built up so much momentum and they're so massive. It's almost impossible to slow them down at this point. So people know what they know. They like what they like when it comes to this stuff, and they'll just stick with it. So it's easy. There's that sense of convenience and familiarity with that. You turn your system on, Fortnite's right there. My friends are playing it. I'm gonna play Fortnite. That's literally how it goes. So, and last one, David says, I just snagged a 30th anniversary PlayStation Portal and wondered if you all knew, does it get more battery life when used as remote play versus streaming? And also, does it get a better quality signal for remote play versus streaming on your home network versus away from home? I asked on the Spawncast main show, but this might be a Ryan specific question.
So I would assume battery life, there's really no big discretion there.
It's not doing the majority of the processing either way.
Because it's just powering the screen. It really is just the screen and the brightness of the screen, I would say.
That'd be an interesting test, though. Have you thought about that?
I guess. I mean, my initial thought was that there would maybe not be a big discretion, because it's like how it's choosing to communicate with the image that's being sent to it is not going to be the big battery draw.
Hey, you get any kind of difference, okay, in favor of game streaming, like it's better battery life, and you title that thing what Sony didn't tell you about the PlayStation Portal streaming.
Oh, man.
You're welcome.
Oh, geez. I hate that that's what we do sometimes, but
I'm just here to help.
It's so stupid. What was the second part, though?
Does it get a better quality signal for remote play versus streaming on your home network versus away from home?
Well, if you're at home and it's remote play, this is still like a lot of misinformation. You need internet at home for the portal. For some reason, it's not using actual internet to communicate with your console. It's speaking through your home network. So it is
authentication, maybe.
That's the weird thing, is that for some reason, like the portal, you do need internet. As far as I know, you can still remote play from a phone without internet. Let's say your router is still on. If your router and modem are still powered on and sending a signal, the signal might not have internet, but it will handshake with your console and you can remote play. For some reason, the portal does ask, like, internet has to be live. Point being, if you're at home, it's using your home network. So at that point, it actually boils down to like the kind of router you have. So if it's, a good model with enough traffic between all your devices, it depends how much congestion is on there. And you could go into your actual IP settings on the router and prioritize devices. That's how you can get the connection down latency wise as low as it can possibly be. When you leave home, that's when internet comes into play. That's when download speeds are actually taking a role, which would primarily be the download speed you get at home, and then the upload speed you get at home, and the download speed the portal is getting outside of your home. And that's for remote play. If it's just PS5 game streaming at that point, whether it's home or not, it's just all based on like that actual internet speed that you're getting. So as long as you've got a really solid download speed, I think Sony recommends 25 or 35 megabits per second down for 4K. Or at this point, you really only need 1080p basically for the portal. But that's kind of what you want to look at as far as like portal connections go, what you need to know.
Okay. That'll work. See, Ryan's got you covered.
Hmm.
I had a feeling he would know. Those are all the questions over there on the Spawncast Network. Shout out to all the people over there dropping the questions in, supporting the shows. Ryan, do you have a PSX going to give it to you?
As always, John, PSX going to give it to you. That is where we go over a nostalgic time in PlayStation history, something obscure, unique, different, maybe something the young ones don't know about. We did have a lot of TV news, and this was on the list. I think it's a good time to talk about it. Sony used to do original programming, and I'm sure you know what I'm getting at here. The Tester on PlayStation Network for PS3. The Tester was a TV show. Do you not remember this? I'll be shocked if you don't remember this.
I remember this. I do remember the Tester.
Are you going to bring up a trailer or something? Because the Tester was like original programming, a reality
I was
TV
double checking the
series.
year because I think I was in store. I think I was in the store in Delaware when this was like a thing because we had PlayStation 3s hooked up. I remember coming across it.
So it was a reality TV series that Sony made called The Tester because you had, and this, I'm not bullshitting you when I say it's genuinely reality TV where they invite a bunch of people into a house and they're competing, doing silly challenges to win a position at Sony as a QA tester, quality assurance, which is really silly because it's an entry level job. But the whole idea was like you could work at PlayStation and test games, and there was a signing bonus involved as well, which I think was like $5,000 or something. But they would offer you like a 1-year contract if you won, and they did not one but 3 seasons of this fucking thing. And it was available exclusively on PSN, as in you needed to buy a PlayStation 3 and download it on PlayStation Network. And this was also PS3, mind you. So like you had to like go to the store, hit the download button on it, download in the background, and full blown, like each episode was like 800 megabytes or something like that. But that's how they would serve it to you. And it was like a full blown reality TV show, 20-minute runtime. And you saw these adults that would do like the one-on-one camera talk. I can't believe Big Physique did this. He's always a drama starter, and it was 3 seasons.
Are these episodes up on YouTube right now?
I'm almost certain they are somewhere
for people to go watch them if they want.
Here's the thing, John. So I did watch it at the time, and that was 2010. I tried watching it again recently. I had to bail out. I could not do it. It's just so, I got secondhand embarrassment. It was so cringy. It was so cringy. Now here's the thing. I don't want to just shit on it. I want to drop some knowledge here. So the winners, I believe all 3 went on to have careers at Sony. So I do want to shout this out. Will Powers was the winner of season 1. He did stay with Sony for quite a bit. In fact, I think he took on some higher roles in corporate. Then he went to Deep Silver. Then he went to Razer. I think he's at Razer right now.
Wow.
Yeah. So he was somebody that, as far as I know, if Will ever catches wind of this, correct me if I'm wrong, but like he wasn't in games. Then he got into games. He stayed in games. Then there was, I think his name is also Will, was season 2. He, I think, stayed at Santa Monica. That was the position for season 2. I think he did stay at Santa Monica for quite a bit. I'm not sure if he's still there, but he was in games for a little bit, well beyond that 1-year contract. And then, oh God, what was his name? I think it was Michael. Season 3, he too like stayed at the company for a bit as well. I don't think he stayed on the PlayStation side. I think he went to Sony just after that. Sony corporate doing something. Sorry I didn't do my homework here. I'm remembering off the top of my head, but the point is 3 seasons. These guys actually did like find a career, ironically. It might be silly to look at this and go, man, this show is so stupid, but like they stuck with it.
Looks like they had who you call it in season 3, Aaron Hansen.
Oh yeah, that was a big thing too.
Raptor.
Yeah, Hugo Raptor was on season 1 because they had a vote in too. So there was an online thing where people could vote for like if one person was voted into the show, and so he obviously like used his poll to win. He was voted off on episode 1 because I remember it so well. I think it was Brent Goki was on the like the panel of judges or something, and they were like just steamrolling him. They're like, you're just here for the YouTube thing or whatever, and they just kicked him off right away. It's hard to watch, man. It's just so hard to watch. I'm sure Aaron talks about that every so often about how silly it was, but there's that. Actually, shout out to Joel as well, Joel Alexander. He was season 2, I think. He's watched my channel for a little bit, and I've talked to him for a bit. He's a really nice guy. I know a lot of them like stay in touch. It's just a very silly thing. If nobody's ever heard of it or seen it, go look it up. It's ridiculous.
I mean, it's kind of hard to fire or let go someone named Will Powers, so it makes a lot of sense. They work there. I mean, that's a great name. If your last name is Powers, it really doesn't matter what your first name is. You got it made.
I'm pretty sure Will is also like super embarrassed every time this comes up too. Like I think he doesn't like talking about it or bringing it up.
Oh, really?
Well, I mean, how could you not feel a little embarrassed? But I believe that's where his career kicked off. So
I saw this thing advertised constantly back then. It must have been maybe it was season 1 or 2. It was that 2010 to 2011 time period, because MLB The Show, we would run that all the time on the TV out at the front of the store, because it sounds funny now because it's a PS3 game looking back on it.
Yeah.
Customers would come in with their parents, and the parents thought a real baseball game was on TV, because you can set it up to where it has the camera angle behind the pitcher, and you can turn off all the assists and the little box and stuff, and it shows the score up there. It looked like an actual baseball game. And every time I turned the PS3 on, it was connected to the internet and stuff. We had it set up. There'd be like the little thing on like the little advertisement thing that would be there. And it would, the tester, season 1 or season 2 or whatever. And it'd show a bunch of them there with a controller. And I think one of them was like the logo with the PlayStation symbols kind of near it and stuff. And, that was it. That was most of my experience with the tester. Was that seeing it all the time and be like, okay. Something.
I can't believe they did 3 seasons of it. I remember like season 1's finale very well, because the whole thing was like the whole show, like they weren't playing games. It was like these really silly, like in-person challenges, like physical based challenges.
Physical based challenges.
Yeah. For like a QA position. So like, yeah, it's so silly and so hard to watch nowadays. But the last episode, they had to play the train sequence in Uncharted 2. And the person that got through it the fastest wins. And that was Will. He won that. In fact, I also remember very well. I think Will was like the only one that like knew what the fuck he was talking about. The whole time you can like watch them talk about their experience with PlayStation and stuff. And I'm not trying to like sound elitist, but like it sounds like Will was the only one that like really like knew PlayStation really well. So like there was like a quiz episode, and he's just fucking nailing them left and right, and everyone's getting the most basic shit wrong, and you're sitting there going,
was there ever a Mystic Ryan shout out on the show?
I don't think I do. My channel started in 2012.
Oh man,
you
just missed it. Missed the opportunity there.
Yeah.
You're just off. Oh, well.
I was just off. I don't think I wanted to be on that show, John.
No?
No. I think I would just apply for QA.
Oh, well, that is kind of funny. It's like, congratulations, you run the register kind of at the front. Go get coffee.
Well, I did want to make it a point to say, like, I believe all three, because I always liked keeping up with them after just to see what happened, and I
Mm.
found out what happened. They got careers out of it.
I'd be curious if the people who ended up winning and then going on, were they taken seriously when they got there? You know what I mean? To like the position,
I
the QA
know.
position, or were they kind of hazed or made fun of, or like, look at the
I 100% always thought about that. I'm not sure if either of them ever talked about it.
uh,
And that's probably like why I think Will would feel embarrassed about it. But the 100% I thought that, because that would just be like, oh yeah, here's how I got the job. And it's just, how do you not feel embarrassed?
right. Yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah.
Well, it seemed like it worked out for Will Powers. So,
You get the signing bonus. It's like 5 grand after
oh
taxes.
wow,
That's
there you go.
after taxes. That's like $2,600.
Hey,
It's a big deal to
that's
move out to California.
yeah. Well, that's I think that's our episode then. Almost
That's
went
a
3 hours.
Yeah. This was a long one.
Man, why? It
It
was a
was
good
good
one
though.
though.
It
It
was
was a good one. It
great.
was a good one. So, hey, let us know some of your thoughts down in the comments and the topics we covered. Hit the like button. You can subscribe to the Spawncast channel here. So we're back every couple of weeks to talk about PlayStation. It sounds like next time we're back, we'll have some games to go over, a presentation. Maybe Microsoft will announce 5 more games for the platform. Who knows?
Would it
So,
be
well,
would it be news at that point? I guess we'd have
I
to
don't know.
talk about Halo.
Yeah, we would actually. A lot of stuff coming up. Okay. So make sure you check in. Thanks everyone for tuning in, for listening to us for probably way too long. But we'll be back in a couple of weeks to talk PlayStation all over again. We'll see you guys then.